She watched a stranger walk through her door during the worst storm Montana had ever seen. And in that single moment, Eliza Warren's carefully planned life shattered like glass. The man they'd later called the Ranger of Judith Basin was bleeding, dangerous, and everything her safe world wasn't. Within days, she'd defy her fiancé, ride into a war party, and choose a love that would make her a legend. This is their story, raw, wild, and completely true. Stay until the end and comment your city below so I can see how far this love story travels. The rain came down like God's own fury that October evening in 1873. Eliza Warren stood behind the counter of Lawson General Store, watching water cascade off the wooden awning outside, turning Helena's main street into a river of mud. The storm had rolled in from the mountains without warning, the kind of Montana storm that made even hardened prospectors seek shelter and pray. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the jars of preserves on the shelves, rattling the glass windows in their frames. She should have closed an hour ago. Her father needed his medicine, needed his dinner, needed her steady hands to help him to bed. But something kept her there, standing in the golden lamplight, watching the storm like she was waiting for something she couldn't name. "Eliza!" Her father's voice drifted weak and thin from the back room. "That you still out there, girl?" "Yes, Papa." She didn't take her eyes off the rain. "Just finishing the inventory. You rest now." Martin Warren had been sick for 3 months. Some wasting illness the doctor and Helena couldn't quite name. It had transformed him from the robust shopkeeper who'd built this store with his own hands into a frail shadow who spent most days in bed, coughing into handkerchiefs Eliza washed each morning before dawn. She was 23 years old, and her life had become as predictable as the sunrise. Wake at 5. Tend to Papa. Open the store. Smile at customers. Accept Thomas Avery's stiff, proper courtship because he was respectable and steady and exactly the kind of man a sensible woman should marry. Close the store, cook dinner, read to Papa, sleep, repeat, safe, structured, suffocating. The door burst open. Eliza's heart jumped into her throat as wind and rain exploded into the store, sending her carefully arranged receipts flying like startled birds. A man filled the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, soaked to the bone. Water streamed from his dark coat, from the brim of his hat, pooled on her clean floor. "We're closed," she said, but her voice came out breathless instead of firm. The man stepped inside and pushed the door shut against the wind. The sudden silence was deafening. He lifted his head, and Eliza's breath caught. She'd seen plenty of men in her 23 years. Miners, merchants, soldiers from Fort Harrison, even a few genuine outlaws passing through. But this man was something different. His face was weathered, maybe 35, with lines carved deep around his eyes from squinting into sun and wind. A dark beard shadowed a strong jaw. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart, pale gray, like winter sky. Exhausted and alert at the same time. Those eyes met hers, and Eliza felt something shift in her chest. Something fundamental. Something terrifying. "I need medical supplies," he said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken to anyone in days. "Wound salve, bandages, carbolic acid if you have it." "I said we're closed." She tried again, but it was a half-hearted protest. Her hands were already moving toward the medical shelf. "I know." He didn't apologize, didn't explain, just stood there dripping on her floor, watching her with those winter sky eyes. "But I need those supplies tonight." Eliza grabbed the items, her mind racing. This man was dangerous, not in the way Thomas always warned her about, not the crude danger of drunks or thieves. This was something wilder, something that called to a part of her she'd spent years trying to ignore. "That'll be $2, she said, setting the supplies on the counter between them like a barrier. He reached into his coat and pulled out a leather wallet, and that's when she saw the blood. His left sleeve was dark with it, fresh enough that it hadn't completely mixed with the rainwater. "You're hurt," she said, and before she could stop herself, she was around the counter reaching for his arm. "Let me see." "It's nothing." But he didn't pull away when she gently pushed back his sleeve. The cut was deep, running from his elbow halfway to his wrist, the kind of wound you got from something sharp and deliberate, not an accident. "This needs stitches," Eliza said, her practical nature overriding her racing heart. "Sit down." "Ma'am, I appreciate it, but—" "I said sit down." She pulled out the chair she kept behind the counter. Unless you want to bleed out before you reach wherever you're going. For a moment, those gray eyes studied her, really studied her, and Eliza had the strangest sensation that he was seeing past her neat shopkeeper's dress, past her carefully pinned hair, down to something wild she'd been hiding even from herself. Then he sat. Eliza's hands trembled slightly as she gathered needle and thread, the carbolic acid, clean cloths. She'd stitched plenty of wounds before, her father, neighbors, even a miner who'd wandered in half dead from a cave collapse. But this felt different, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with the actual task. "This is going to hurt," she warned, pouring carbolic acid over the wound. He didn't even flinch, just kept watching her face with an intensity that made her skin heat despite the cold rain blowing through the cracks in the walls. "What's your name?" she asked, threading the needle. "Does it matter?" "I'm about to sew your arm back together. I'd like to know who I'm helping." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Colt Harrington. Eliza Warren." She positioned the needle. "This really is going to hurt, Mr. Harrington." "Just Colt." She began stitching, her hands steady despite her hammering heart. He watched her work in silence, and she was acutely aware of how close they were. Close enough that she could smell rain and pine and leather, close enough to see a thin scar bisecting his left eyebrow, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body despite his soaked clothes. "You're not from Helena," she said, making her stitches small and neat. "No." "Just passing through?" "Something like that." "You always this talkative?" That earned her an actual smile, brief but genuine. "You always this bold with strangers?" Eliza paused, the needle halfway through another stitch. Was she being bold? Yes. Absolutely. The Eliza who'd woken up this morning would never have spoken to a strange man this way, would never have invited him to sit, would never have felt this electric current running between them like lightning before the thunder. "Only the ones who bleed on my floor," she said, and continued stitching. "Fair enough?" When she finished, she tied off the thread and wrapped his arm with clean bandages. Her fingers lingered a moment too long on his wrist, feeling his pulse beat strong and steady beneath her touch. "Thank you," Colt said quietly. "What do I owe you?" The supplies were $2. The stitches? She should charge him. She needed every penny, with Papa's medicine bills piling up. But when she looked into those winter-gray eyes, she heard herself say, "Consider them a welcome to Montana." "I've been in Montana for 15 years. "Then consider them a welcome to Helena." He stood, and Eliza had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. He was taller than she'd realized, and now that he was close, she could see he carried himself like a soldier, or something like one. There was a controlled power in the way he moved, a wariness that suggested he was always ready for violence. "You should go," she said, suddenly desperate to get him out of her store before she did something foolish. "The storm's getting worse." Colt nodded, but he didn't move toward the door. Instead, he looked around the store, at the neat shelves, the carefully swept floor, the little touches that spoke of someone who took pride in their work. His gaze lingered on the back room where Papa coughed weakly. "You run this place alone?" "With my father. He's not well." "And there's no one else to help?" Something in his voice made her defensive. "I manage just fine, thank you." "I wasn't suggesting otherwise." He picked up the supplies she'd gathered, tucking them inside his coat. "Just seems like a lot for one person." "Well, that's none of your concern, is it?" The words came out sharper than she intended, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not hurt exactly, but recognition, like he understood what it meant to push people away before they could get too close. "No," he said softly. "I suppose it's not." He moved toward the door, and Eliza felt panic rise in her chest. He was leaving. This strange, dangerous man who'd burst into her store and made her feel alive for the first time in years was walking back out into the rain, and she'd never see him again. "Wait!" she called out before she could stop herself. Colt turned, one hand on the door handle. Eliza's mind raced. What was she doing? What could she possibly say that wouldn't sound desperate or improper or completely insane? "Your arm," she blurted. "You need to keep it dry. Change the bandages tomorrow. If you see any red streaks, that's infection. You'll need to see a proper doctor." "I'll remember." "I mean it. Infection can kill you faster than whatever gave you that cut. Noted. But he was smiling again, that ghost of warmth that transformed his hard face into something almost gentle.
This story was posted
Good night,
on the
Eliza
channel
Warren.
west of Betrayal.
Good night,
Please
Colt
do not
Harrington.
repost it in
He
any
opened the
form.
door, and the wind rushed in again, full of rain and cold in the wild Montana night. Then he was gone, vanishing into the darkness like he'd never been there at all. Eliza stood frozen for a long moment, listening to the storm, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. Then she locked the door with shaking hands and leaned against it, closing her eyes. What had just happened? Eliza? Papa called weakly. Who was that? No one, Papa, she said, but the lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Just a customer. She cleaned up the blood, swept the floor, organized the scattered receipts, but her hands moved automatically, her mind elsewhere. She kept seeing those gray eyes, kept feeling the heat of his skin under her fingertips, kept hearing the rough warmth of his voice saying her name. Eliza Warren. No one had ever made her name sound like that, like something precious, something worth remembering. She was being ridiculous. He was a stranger who'd needed medical help. That was all. By morning, she'd forget about him, and life would return to its predictable pattern. But when she finally went to bed that night, lying in her narrow cot listening to the rain hammer the roof, Eliza knew she was lying to herself. She wouldn't forget Colt Harrington. She couldn't. Sit down. The storm raged through the night and into the next day. By morning, Helena's streets were rivers of mud, and half the town had lost roof shingles. Eliza woke to find 3 new leaks in the store, all of which she had to patch with buckets and oilcloth before opening. Thomas Avery arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, as he did every morning. He was 28, the son of Helena's most successful assayer with neat blonde hair, careful hands, and a personality as predictable as a metronome. Good morning, Eliza, he said, removing his hat and shaking off the rain. Quite a storm we had. Yes, quite. She arranged tins on the shelf, avoiding his eyes. I trust you and your father weathered it well? We're fine, thank you. Thomas cleared his throat, his tell that he was about to say something he'd rehearsed. I was thinking, given the state of the roads, perhaps we should postpone our Sunday walk until next week. That's fine. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to take a short stroll this afternoon. The rain has stopped, though the mud is quite— Next week is fine, Thomas. He nodded, satisfied. Excellent. Well, I should return to the assayer's office. Father needs help with the new claim assessments. He paused at the door. Oh, I nearly forgot. Did anyone unusual come through yesterday evening? Eliza's heart skipped. Unusual how? There was a man, dangerous-looking fellow, who asked Father about supplies for an extended journey. Father directed him here, but he wanted to warn you. These frontier types can be— Thomas lowered his voice conspiratorially. Unpredictable. Colt. I had a late customer, Eliza said carefully. He bought medical supplies. Nothing unusual about that. You should be more careful, Eliza. A young woman alone in a store after dark. It's not proper, not safe. I can take care of myself. I'm sure you can, but— Thomas. She turned to face him fully. I appreciate your concern, but I've been running this store alone for 3 months now, and I haven't had any problems. Yet, he said darkly. You haven't had problems yet. After he left, Eliza stood fuming behind the counter. Thomas meant well. She knew that. He was offering her exactly what every sensible woman wanted: security, respectability, a comfortable life. When Papa died, and the doctor said it wouldn't be long, she'd need someone to take care of her. Thomas was that someone. So why did the thought make her feel like she was being buried alive? The day dragged on with its usual parade of customers. Mrs. Henderson buying flour and complaining about the rain. Young Billy Tucker sneaking candy when he thought she wasn't looking. Father O'Brien from the Catholic Church picking up his monthly order of candles and asking after Papa's health with genuine concern. Eliza smiled, made change, kept the store running. But part of her mind was elsewhere, replaying the previous night, the way Colt had looked at her, the electric feeling when their hands touched, the sense that something important had happened, even if she couldn't name what. She was locking up at sunset when she heard hoofbeats. Her heart leaped before her brain caught up. Foolish, she told herself. It wouldn't be him. It couldn't be him. He'd gotten his supplies and moved on, wherever mysterious men like that moved on to. But when she turned, Colt Harrington was riding up Main Street on a rangy bay horse, leading a pack mule behind him. He dismounted in front of her store, moving with that same controlled grace, and Eliza's pulse kicked into a gallop. "Evening," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Evening." She tried to sound casual, like her stomach wasn't full of butterflies. "Arm doing okay?" "Better than I expected." He flexed his left hand. "You stitch like you've done it before." "Helena's a rough town. You learn." They stood there for a moment, the evening settling around them, neither quite willing to break the silence. Eliza noticed things she'd missed last night. The well-worn Colt .45 on his hip, the rifle in his saddle scabbard, the way his eyes constantly scanned the street like he was expecting trouble. "I brought something," Colt said finally. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small cloth bundle. "For your father." Eliza blinked in surprise. "What?" "You mentioned he's sick. This is willow bark tea. It'll help with pain and fever. Not a cure, but it might make him more comfortable." She took the bundle with numb fingers. Why would you?" "Because you helped me last night, and because I know what it's like to watch someone suffer." There was something raw in his voice, some old grief he carried with him. Eliza wanted to ask, wanted to know everything about this man who'd walked into her life like a lightning strike. "Thank you," she said instead. "Truly, this is... You didn't have to." "I know. Would you..." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Would you like to come in? I could make coffee. It's the least I can do after you brought this all the way back." She saw him hesitate, saw the war playing out behind those gray eyes. Whatever Colt Harrington was, ranger, drifter, outlaw, he was a man who didn't let himself get close to people. But then he nodded. "Coffee sounds good." Eliza's hand shook as she unlocked the door and led him inside. The store felt different with him in it, smaller, warmer, more alive. She lit the lamps and started water boiling on the small stove she kept in the back room. "Papa?" she called softly. "I'm making coffee. Would you like some?" A weak cough answered her. "No, honey, I'm just going to rest." She returned to find Colt examining a display of mining tools with professional interest. He'd removed his hat, and she could see his dark hair was longer than fashion dictated, curling slightly at his collar. "You know mining?" she asked. "A little. Did some prospecting years back before..." He trailed off. "Before?" "Before I found other work." Eliza poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed him one. Their fingers brushed, and that electric feeling sparked through her again, stronger this time, impossible to ignore. "What kind of work?" she pressed. Colt took a long sip of coffee, clearly debating how much to tell her. "I'm a territorial ranger." "A ranger?" That explained the gun, the wariness, the way he carried himself. Rangers were the law in Montana Territory, when there was law at all. They tracked outlaws through mountains and badlands, protected settlers from hostile tribes, dealt with claim jumpers and road agents. It was dangerous, lonely work. "You don't seem surprised," Colt observed. "You don't seem like a shopkeeper." She smiled over her cup. "What brings a ranger to Helena?" "Resupply mostly. I've been tracking rustlers up near Fort Benton for 2 months. Finally got them to the marshal yesterday." "Is that how you got hurt?" "One of them had a knife. He was better with it than I expected." Eliza's stomach clenched at the casual way he said it, like getting cut in a knife fight was just another day's work. "You could have been killed." "Could have. Wasn't." He met her eyes over the rim of his cup. "Hazard of the job." "Don't you get tired of it? The danger, the loneliness?" "Every day." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. "But it's what I know. That's a sad reason to do something." "What about you?" Colt turned the question back on her. "Don't you get tired of this? Same store, same customers, same life every single day?" Eliza opened her mouth to deny it, to recite the comfortable lies she told herself and everyone else. That she loved the store, loved Helena, loved her simple, safe life. But something about those winter gray eyes made lying impossible. "Yes, she whispered. God help me, yes. The
This
confession
story
hung in
was
the air
posted
between
on the
them,
channel
dangerous
West of
and
Betrayal.
true.
Please
Colt
do not
set down his
repost
coffee
it
cup and
in
took
any
a step
form.
closer. What would you do? He asked quietly. If you could do anything? I don't know. Eliza's heart was racing. Leave, travel, see something besides these same streets, these same faces. I used to dream about the ocean when I was a girl, about ships and distant ports and adventures. Why didn't you go? Because Mama died when I was 15. Because Papa needed me. Because good daughters don't abandon their families for selfish dreams. She laughed bitterly. Because I'm not brave enough. I think you're braver than you know. The way he said it, quiet, certain, made Eliza's breath catch. When was the last time someone had seen her as brave instead of dutiful? When was the last time someone had looked past the neat dress and practical manner to see the wild, restless girl she'd buried inside? I should go, Colt said, but he didn't move. Yes, Eliza agreed, but she didn't step back. They were standing close, too close. Close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. The air between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. Eliza, he said, and her name in his mouth was a prayer and a warning all at once. Don't, she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was asking him not to do. Don't leave. Don't stay. Don't make me want things I can never have. Colt reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His calloused fingers lingered on her cheek, rough and gentle at the same time. You deserve better than this, he said softly. Better than a store and a dying father and a life that feels like a cage. And what do you deserve? She barely recognized her own voice. Better than tracking criminals alone through the mountains? Better than knife fights and loneliness? Probably. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But I stopped believing I'd get it a long time ago. Colt. A violent coughing fit erupted from the back room, shattering the moment like dropped glass. Eliza jerked back, reality crashing down around her. Papa, she gasped, rushing toward the back room. She found her father sitting up in bed, handkerchief pressed to his mouth, body racked with coughs that sounded like they were tearing him apart from the inside. She grabbed the water pitcher and poured him a glass with shaking hands. Here, Papa, slow sips. Martin Warren drank gratefully, the coughing gradually subsiding. When he lowered the handkerchief, there were flecks of blood on the white cloth. Eliza's heart sank. It was getting worse. Sorry, honey, her father wheezed. Don't know what came over me. It's all right. Just rest now. Was there someone here? I thought I heard voices. Just... Eliza glanced toward the door. Colt stood in the doorway, hat in hands, his expression carefully neutral. Just someone who brought medicine for you, Papa. Willow bark tea. Martin's eyes, still sharp despite his failing body, moved between his daughter and the stranger. Eliza saw recognition dawn in his face, saw him understanding something she wasn't ready to name. That's kind of you, sir, Martin said to Colt. I'm Martin Warren. Colt Harrington. Colt stepped forward and shook the older man's frail hand with careful gentleness. Your daughter took good care of my arm last night. Figured I'd return the favor. She's good at taking care of people. Martin smiled at Eliza. Sometimes too good. Forgets to take care of herself. Papa. It's true, honey. When's the last time you did something just for yourself? Eliza couldn't answer that. Didn't want to. Colt saved her. I should let you rest, Mr. Warren. Eliza, walk me out? She followed him back through the store, acutely aware of her father's perceptive gaze tracking them. Outside, the evening had deepened to purple twilight, stars beginning to pierce the darkening sky. Thank you, Eliza said. For the medicine, for the coffee, for... She gestured helplessly. Everything. Your father's a good man. He is. He deserves better than this disease. We rarely get what we deserve. Colt moved toward his horse, then paused. There's a wagon train forming up, heading west to Great Falls, then up toward the Judith Basin. They leave in 3 days. Eliza's pulse quickened. Why are you telling me this? No reason. But his eyes said otherwise. Just thought you should know, in case you ever decide to be brave. He swung into the saddle with easy grace, and Eliza felt panic rise in her chest. This was goodbye. She might never see him again. The thought was unbearable. Will you come back? The question escaped before she could stop it. Colt looked down at her, and for a moment, that careful control slipped. She saw longing in his face, hunger, a yearning that matched her own. I don't think that's a good idea, he said quietly, for either of us. Why not? Because Eliza Warren, he leaned down slightly, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. If I come back, I'm going to want things I have no business wanting, and I think you will too. Her breath caught. Maybe I already do. The confession hung between them, dangerous and electric. Colt's jaw tightened, and for a heartbeat, Eliza thought he might dismount, might take her in his arms, might kiss her the way she desperately wanted to be kissed. Instead, he straightened in the saddle and touched the brim of his hat. Good night, Eliza. Good night, Cowboy. The nickname slipped out naturally, and Colt's lips curved into a genuine smile, the first real one she'd seen from him. Cowboy, he repeated, like he was tasting the word. I haven't been called that in years. Does it suit you? Once upon a time, maybe. He gathered his reins. Take care of yourself, Eliza Warren. And your father. Then he was riding away, horse and mule moving down Main Street at an easy walk. Eliza watched until he disappeared into the darkness, her hand pressed against her chest where her heart hammered like thunder. She stood there for a long time, breathing the cool night air, feeling the world she'd known for 23 years cracking apart like ice in spring. When she finally went back inside, Papa was waiting. That's not just some customer, he said knowingly. Papa, it's not... Eliza, honey, I may be dying, but I'm not blind. Martin's voice was gentle. I saw how you looked at him, how he looked at you. It doesn't matter, he's leaving. Maybe. Or maybe... Martin started coughing again, but waved her away when she moved to help. Maybe that's exactly why it matters. Life's too short to let chances slip away. God knows I learned that when your mama died. Papa, I can't. Thomas Avery is a fine young man who will give you a fine, safe life. Martin's eyes bored into hers. But is that what you want, honey? Really want? Or are you just too scared to reach for something more? Eliza couldn't answer. The truth was too big, too terrifying to speak aloud. She helped her father back to bed and made him a cup of the willow bark tea Colt had brought. Then she retreated to her own small room and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. Cowboy. She'd called him Cowboy before she even knew his name was Colt Harrington. Something about him, the way he moved, the wildness barely contained beneath that controlled exterior, had made the word rise naturally to her lips. And now he was leaving. In 3 days, he'd ride off into the Montana wilderness, and she'd never see him again. She'd marry Thomas, tend the store, watch her father die, and live out her days in careful, respectable safety. It was the sensible choice, the right choice. So why did it feel like dying? Eliza lay back on her bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw winter gray eyes and felt the ghost of calloused fingers on her cheek. If I come back, I'm going to want things I have no business wanting. What did he want? And why was it wrong for either of them to want it? The questions circled in her mind like hawks, finding no answers. Outside, the Montana night stretched vast and dark and full of possibility. The same night that held Colt Harrington somewhere out there, perhaps asking himself the same impossible questions. Eliza pressed her hand against her chest, feeling her heartbeat steady and strong. She wasn't brave. She'd said it herself. But lying there in the darkness, she made herself a promise. If fate gave her one more chance, just one more moment with the cowboy who'd walked into her store like lightning striking, she wouldn't waste it being scared. She'd be brave. She had to be. Because some chances only came once. 3 days felt like 3 years. Eliza moved through them in a haze, going through the motions of her life while her mind stayed fixed on a man she barely knew. She served customers, tended Papa, accepted Thomas's stiff courtship, and every moment felt like play acting, like she was watching someone else live her life from a great distance. On the second day, Thomas announced his plan over tea in the store's back room. "I've secured positions for us on the Bellamy
This
wagon
story
train,"
was
he
posted
said,
on the
stirring
channel
sugar
west
into
of
his cup
Betrayal.
with precise
Please do not
movements.
repost
"We
it
leave
in any
tomorrow morning."
form.
Eliza's hand froze halfway to her mouth. "What?" "The Bellamy train. They're heading northwest to establish a new settlement in the Judith Basin." Thomas smiled, clearly pleased with himself. "Father's invested in a silver claim up there. Very promising. He wants me to oversee the assay operation. It's an excellent opportunity." "Thomas, Papa can barely get out of bed. We can't—" "Which is exactly why we should go." Thomas leaned forward earnestly. "There's a doctor traveling with the train, Dr. Samuel Morrison, trained in Philadelphia, far more qualified than anyone in Helena. He can treat your father properly during the journey, and once we arrive, the mountain air will do him good. Everyone knows the high country is healthful." Eliza set down her teacup, her mind racing. Leave Helena? Travel into the wilderness? It was everything she'd dreamed about. But not like this. Not as part of Thomas's careful plans. Not with Papa so sick. Not without— She pushed the thought away. Colt was gone. He'd ridden out 2 nights ago, and she hadn't seen him since. Whatever foolish attraction she'd felt was just that. Foolish. Thomas was offering her a future. A stable, sensible future. So why did accepting it feel like surrender? "I need to think about it," she said. Thomas's smile tightened. "Eliza, the train leaves at first light. I need to confirm our positions today." "Then you'll have my answer today. Just give me a few hours." After Thomas left, Eliza sat with Papa in his room. He looked frailer than ever, propped up on pillows, his breathing labored. "What do you think?" she asked quietly. "Should we go?" Martin studied her face with those sharp eyes. "That depends. Are you going because you want to, or because Thomas wants you to?" "I don't know anymore. I wanted to leave Helena, wanted adventure, but this feels wrong somehow, like I'm running away with the wrong person." "Then maybe you are." "Papa, honey, I'm dying." Martin said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. "We both know it. The question is, what are you going to do with your life after I'm gone? Marry Thomas because he's safe, or take a chance on something that scares you? Colt's gone. Even if I wanted— Are you sure about that?" Before Eliza could answer, the store's bell rang. She rose with a sigh, expecting another customer. Instead, she found Thomas standing with a tall, weathered man in a duster coat and a woman with a severe bun. "Eliza, this is Captain Bellamy and his wife Margaret," Thomas said. "They're organizing the wagon train." Captain Bellamy nodded curtly. "Miss Warren, your fiancé tells me you're a capable woman. We can use capable women on the trail." "I haven't decided if we're coming," Eliza said. "Well, decide quick." Bellamy's voice was gruff but not unkind. "We pull out at dawn whether you're with us or not. 23 wagons, 47 souls. We're taking the northern route through Blackfoot territory, fastest way to Judith Basin." Something in Eliza's chest went cold. "Blackfoot territory? Is that safe?" "Safe enough if you know what you're doing. I've made this run twice before." Bellamy's confidence was absolute. "We'll have armed outriders, and the tribes are mostly quiet this time of year. 2 weeks, and we'll be there." Margaret Bellamy smiled thinly. "The good Lord protects the righteous, dear." After they left, Eliza found herself standing at the window, watching Helena's streets with unseeing eyes. Something felt wrong about this, deeply wrong. Blackfoot territory, a dying father, a marriage she didn't want. Everything was moving too fast, spiraling out of her control. She needed air. She needed to think. She locked the store and walked toward the edge of town, where Helena gave way to wilderness. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and eternal, and somewhere out there— "You're making a mistake." Eliza spun around. Colt stood 20 feet away, his horse ground-tied behind him, his face grim. Her heart leaped into her throat. "You came back." "I had to." He moved closer and she could see tension in every line of his body. "I heard about the Bellamy train. You can't go with them, Eliza." "How did you—" "I have friends in town. Word travels." His gray eyes burned into hers. "That northern route is suicide right now. There's a war party moving through that territory. Ghost Hawk's band. 50 warriors. Maybe more. They've already hit 2 smaller groups this month. Captain Bellamy said it was safe. Bellamy's an arrogant fool who thinks his luck will hold forever. Colt's voice was harsh. I tracked Ghost Hawk for 3 weeks last spring. I know how he thinks, how he moves. That route is exactly where he'll be watching. Then we'll take a different route. There is no different route, not to Judith Basin. You either go south through the Badlands, which adds 2 weeks and will kill your father, or you don't go at all. Eliza's hands clenched into fists. So what would you have me do? Stay in Helena forever? Watch Papa die in that back room? Marry Thomas and pretend I'm happy? I'd have you stay alive. Colt stepped closer, his voice dropping. I'd have you wait until spring when the passes are safer. I'd have you not ride into an ambush because some fool with a silver claim thinks he knows the territory better than the people who've been fighting over it for 100 years. You don't get to tell me what to do, Eliza said, but her voice shook. You rode away, Colt. You said coming back was a bad idea, so why are you here? Because I can't. He broke off, jaw clenched. Because I made it maybe 10 miles before I turned around. Because I've been camped outside Helena for 2 days trying to convince myself to leave. Because the thought of you dying out there. He dragged a hand through his hair. Damn it, Eliza. I'm here because I can't let you ride into that death trap. Her breath caught. He'd stayed. For her. He'd actually stayed. Come with us then, she said impulsively. If it's so dangerous, come with us and keep us safe. I can't. I have orders to ride to Fort Benton in 3 days. A ranger doesn't just... Then what do you want from me? Frustration and longing and fear all tangled together in her chest. You tell me not to go, but you won't come with me. You look at me like I matter, but then you ride away. What am I supposed to do with that? Colt stared at her, something raw and desperate in his face. For a moment, she thought he might close the distance between them, might finally do what they'd both been wanting since the moment he walked into her store. Instead, he took a step back. I'm sorry, he said roughly. I shouldn't have come. Just promise me you'll be careful. Take the southern route if you can. And if something happens, anything, you send for me at Fort Benton. Promise me. Colt. But he was already walking to his horse, already swinging into the saddle. Eliza wanted to call him back, wanted to beg him to stay, wanted to tell him everything she'd been feeling for 3 days. Instead, she watched him ride away again, feeling something crack deep in her chest. She went back to the store and found Thomas waiting, contract papers spread on the counter. Well, he asked, what's your decision? Eliza looked at the papers, at Thomas's expectant face, at the life he was offering her. Safe, respectable, dead inside. She thought of Colt's warning. She thought of her father coughing blood. She thought of everything that could go wrong. Then she thought of staying in Helena, living with the ghost of what might have been, spending the rest of her life wondering if she'd been too scared to reach for something more. We'll go, she said. Tell Captain Bellamy we're coming. Thomas's face lit up. Excellent. I'll make the arrangements immediately. Oh, Eliza, you won't regret this. This is the start of our future together. But as he bustled out, already planning and organizing, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a terrible mistake. That night she barely slept. She packed their belongings by lamplight, clothes, medicine, the willow bark tea Colt had given her. Papa dozed fitfully, his breathing ragged. In the morning, they'd leave Helena forever. She tried to feel excited, tried to feel anything except the cold dread settling in her stomach. At dawn, Helena's edge was chaos. 23 wagons formed a rough line, families loading last-minute supplies, children running underfoot, livestock lowing and stamping. Captain Bellamy sat astride a large roan horse, shouting orders and checking his manifest. Thomas had arranged for them to share a sturdy Conestoga with another couple, the Hendersons, who were heading to Judith Basin to open a dry goods store. Papa lay in the back on a makeshift bed, wrapped in blankets. Mrs. Henderson, a kindly woman in her 50s, had already taken charge of making him comfortable. Don't you worry, dear, she told Eliza. I nursed my own father through consumption. I know how to make a body comfortable on the trail. Dr. Morrison appeared, a thin, fastidious man with wire-rimmed spectacles, and examined Papa with professional efficiency. Lung disease clearly, he pronounced. Keep him warm and hydrated. I'll check him daily. He handed Eliza
This
a
story
brown
was
bottle.
posted on the channel
Laudanum,
west of
One
Betrayal.
spoonful if
Please
the
do
pain
not
gets too
repost
bad.
it in any
Then
form.
Thomas was calling her name, pointing to the lead wagon where Captain Bellamy was gathering the company together. Listen up, Bellamy's voice carried across the crowd. We're heading northwest through Prickly Pear Canyon, then up to the Missouri Breaks. 2 weeks if weather holds. You do what I say, when I say it, and we'll all get there alive. Questions? A young man with red hair raised his hand. What about Indians, Captain? We got 6 outriders, all experienced. Plus I've made this run twice. Just stay close, stay alert, and don't wander off. Bellamy's confidence was infectious. Now mount up. We're burning daylight. The wagons began to roll, wheels creaking, horses straining in their traces. Eliza sat beside Mr. Henderson on the bench seat, watching Helena recede behind them. Part of her felt free. Finally leaving. Part of her felt like she was riding toward disaster. Thomas rode a dappled mare beside their wagon, already chatting with other men about business prospects in Judith Basin. He looked perfectly at ease, perfectly confident. Eliza wished she felt the same. They made good time that first day, following the Prickly Pear Creek northwest. The country was beautiful, rolling hills giving way to mountains, stands of pine filling the air with resin scent. But Eliza couldn't shake her unease. She kept scanning the ridgelines, half expecting to see warriors watching them. That night they camped in a meadow. Captain Bellamy posted guards and families gathered around campfires, cooking dinner and swapping stories. Papa managed to eat some soup before falling into restless sleep. Eliza sat alone at the edge of camp, staring at the stars, thinking about gray eyes and rough hands and a warning she'd ignored. Miss Warren? She turned to find Dr. Morrison approaching, medical bag in hand. Just checking on you, dear. First day on the trail can be overwhelming. I'm fine, thank you. Your father's quite ill. I hope you understand. I know he's dying, Dr. Morrison. You don't need to pretend otherwise. The doctor nodded slowly. Then you should know he likely won't survive the journey. The exertion, the exposure. I'm sorry to be blunt, but you should prepare yourself. After he left, Eliza pressed her face into her hands. She'd known, of course, but hearing it said aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Eliza? Thomas knelt beside her, concern on his face. What did the doctor say? Papa's dying, her voice cracked. I'm taking him into the wilderness to die. No, you're giving him a chance. Thomas took her hand. The mountain air, the new doctor, it might help. And even if it doesn't, well, at least he'll die knowing you tried everything. That's what love is, Eliza, doing everything you can. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But as she lay in the wagon that night, listening to her father's labored breathing and the coyotes yipping in the distance, all she could think was, Colt was right. I've made a terrible mistake. The second day started well enough. Clear skies, good trail, no problems. But by afternoon, dark clouds were building over the mountains, and Captain Bellamy pushed them harder, trying to make the next shelter before the storm hit. They didn't make it. The rain came down in sheets, turning the trail to mud. Wagons slipped and slid, wheels sinking deep. Horses struggled, children cried, and everyone got soaked to the bone. Keep moving, Bellamy shouted over the thunder. There's an old trapper's cabin 2 miles ahead. But the third wagon in line, a heavily loaded freight wagon, got stuck in a muddy ravine. Its wheels sank to the axles, and no amount of whipping or cursing could move it. We need to unload it, Thomas shouted. Lighten the weight. In this rain, the wagon's owner, a burly German named Kruger, shook his head. Everything will be ruined. Better ruined than stuck. Men gathered around the wagon, arguing about the best approach. Meanwhile, the rain poured down, the trail grew worse, and Papa's coughing echoed from inside their wagon. Please, Eliza called to Thomas. Papa needs shelter. Can we at least get him to that cabin? Not until we clear this wagon. Everyone moves together. That's ridiculous. He'll catch pneumonia. Eliza, Captain Bellamy's rules are clear. No one splits from the group. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to grab the reins and drive Papa to shelter herself. But Thomas was already back with the other men, organizing chains and ropes to pull the stuck wagon free. 2 hours later, they finally got it moving. By then, everyone was exhausted, freezing, and miserable. When they reached the trapper's cabin, a tiny, dilapidated structure that could barely hold 10 people, Captain Bellamy assigned it to families with small children. "Everyone else camps in the wagons," he announced. "Guards rotate every 2 hours. We move at first light." That night was miserable. Cold rain leaked through the canvas cover. Papa's coughing grew worse, and his forehead burned with fever. Eliza held him, feeding him sips of willow bark tea, whispering reassurances she didn't believe. Mrs. Henderson helped where she could, but there wasn't much anyone could do except wait for dawn. "Thomas," Eliza said when her fiancé checked on them, "Papa needs a real doctor. This isn't working." "Dr. Morrison is a real doctor. He's a Philadelphia surgeon who's never seen anyone this sick on a trail. We need to turn back." "We're 3 days out, Eliza. We're not turning back. People are going to die." Thomas's jaw tightened. That's fear talking. Captain Bellamy knows what he's doing. But the next morning proved Eliza right. They found one of the outriders, a young man named Cooper, collapsed beside his horse. He'd been on watch and had simply collapsed. "Exposure," Dr. Morrison said. "Hypothermia." They wrapped him in blankets, put him in a wagon, and kept moving, but the mood of the company had changed. People were scared now, whispering in groups, questioning Bellamy's decisions. On the 5th day, they reached the Missouri Breaks, a wild, broken country of coulees and ravines that made travel treacherous. Bellamy led them along a narrow trail that snaked between cliffs, and everyone held their breath, praying wheels wouldn't slip. That's when Eliza saw him. At first, she thought she was hallucinating from exhaustion and fear. But no. There he was, sitting on his bay horse atop a ridge maybe 200 yards away, watching the wagon train with those winter-gray eyes. Colt. Her heart soared. He'd followed them. Despite his orders, despite everything, he'd followed them. She tried to wave, to call out, but her voice was lost in the general noise of the caravan. And then Colt was riding down the ridge at a gallop, his horse sliding on loose rock, heading straight for Captain Bellamy. "Stop!" Colt's voice carried across the ravine. "Stop the wagons now!" Bellamy turned in his saddle, face darkening with anger. "Who the hell are you?" "Territorial Ranger Colt Harrington." He reached them in a spray of gravel. "And you're leading these people straight into an ambush." A shocked silence fell over the company. "That's absurd," Bellamy sputtered. "I've traveled this route twice. Not when Ghost Hawk's war party was camped 15 miles north of here." Colt's voice was iron. "I just came from their position. 50 warriors, maybe more, and they're tracking you. You keep going this way, you'll run into them by tomorrow morning." "You're trying to scare us," Thomas spoke up. "Probably want to hire on as a guide for money." Colt's gaze swung to Thomas, cold and assessing. "I don't want your money. I want you to turn around before you get everyone killed." "We can't turn back," Bellamy said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "We've come too far." "Then take the southern route. It's longer, harder, but it's safe." "This route?" Colt gestured ahead. "In 2 days, you'll be in a box canyon with cliffs on 3 sides. Ghost Hawk will pick you off one by one." Eliza felt ice settle in her stomach. Everything Colt had warned her about was coming true. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Mrs. Bellamy demanded. "You could be anyone." Colt reached into his coat and pulled out a worn leather badge. "The Territorial Ranger Star. I've been tracking hostile movements for 3 months. I know this territory better than any of you, and I'm telling you right now, you keep going this direction, people will die." The company erupted into frightened chatter. Some wanted to turn back immediately. Others argued they should trust Bellamy. Still others suggested splitting up. "Quiet!" Bellamy roared. "Everyone shut up and let me think." Eliza climbed down from the wagon, her legs shaky, and pushed through the crowd toward Colt. When their eyes met, something passed between them. Relief, recognition, and something deeper that made her chest ache. "You came," she said quietly. "I told you I couldn't let you ride into a death trap." His voice was rough. "Even if it means I'm disobeying orders." "What about Fort Benton?" "Fort Benton can wait." "You can't." Before Eliza could respond, Thomas appeared at her elbow, face flushed with anger. "Eliza, get back to the wagon. This doesn't concern you." "This concerns everyone," she shot back. "If Mr. Harrington says it's dangerous..." Mr. Harrington is a stranger trying to frighten us. We have Captain Bellamy. Who's going to get you all killed? Colt's voice cut through
This
Thomas's
story was
bluster like a
posted on the
knife.
channel west of
Look,
Betrayal.
I don't care
Please
if you
do not
believe me or
repost
not,
it in any
but
form.
if you have any sense, any concern for these people, you'll take the southern route. The southern route adds 2 weeks, Captain Bellamy said. We'll run out of supplies, and some of these folks... His gaze flickered to Papa's wagon. Some won't last that long. They definitely won't last an arrow to the chest. The brutal honesty silenced everyone. Even Thomas couldn't argue with that. If we go south, Kruger spoke up, can you guide us? You know the way? I know it. And you'll stay with us? Keep us safe? Colt hesitated, and Eliza saw the war in his face. He had orders, duties, a life that didn't include babysitting settlers through the wilderness. But then his gaze found hers again, and she saw his answer before he spoke. Yeah, he said quietly. I'll stay. Captain Bellamy looked around at his company, at the frightened faces, the sick children, the dying men. Finally, he nodded. All right, we go south. Harrington, you lead. Relief flooded through Eliza so intensely her knees nearly buckled. Colt was staying. They weren't riding into an ambush. Maybe they'd actually survive this. Thomas grabbed her arm, pulling her aside. His face was tight with anger. This is wrong, Eliza. Bellamy knows this trail. That ranger is just trying to save our lives, she interrupted. Thomas, why can't you see that? I see a man who looks at my fiancée like he has a right to her. I see you looking back the same way. The accusation hung between them, ugly and true. Eliza opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. I thought so, Thomas said bitterly. This was a mistake, all of it. He stalked away, leaving Eliza standing alone in the middle of the ravine, feeling like her carefully constructed life was finally, irrevocably falling apart. And the terrible thing was, she felt relieved. The southern route was every bit as hard as Colt had warned. The trail wound through Badlands country, eroded gullies, sharp rocks, and endless climbs that left the horses lathered and exhausted. Progress slowed to a crawl. But Colt knew the territory like he'd been born to it. He found water where everyone else saw only dust. He spotted shortcuts that saved hours. At night, he positioned the wagons defensively and kept watch personally, never seeming to sleep. And slowly, grudgingly, people began to trust him. On the third day of the new route, another wagon got stuck, not in mud this time, but in loose gravel on a hillside. The wheels spun uselessly, and the wagon began sliding backward toward a steep drop. Everyone out, Colt shouted. Now! The family scrambled clear just as the wagon lurched sideways. For a moment, it teetered on the edge of the ravine. Then Colt was there, grabbing the tongue, his boots digging into the gravel, using his body weight to keep the wagon from tumbling over. Chains, he roared. Get chains on this thing! Men rushed forward with chains and ropes. They secured the wagon to a boulder, then slowly, carefully, pulled it back onto solid ground. When it was done, Colt collapsed against a rock, breathing hard, his bandaged arm bleeding through the cloth. Eliza was at his side immediately. You tore your stitches. It'll keep. But he let her examine the wound, wincing when she pressed gently on the torn edges. You're an idiot, she said, but her voice shook. You could have been killed. Would you have cared? She looked up sharply, and their faces were close. So close she could see exhaustion in his eyes, could feel his breath on her cheek. Yes, she whispered. I would have cared. Very much. Something ignited in Colt's gaze. Heat and hunger and barely controlled want. His hand came up to cup her face, callous thumb brushing her cheekbone. Eliza. There you are. Thomas's voice shattered the moment like dropped crystal. I've been looking everywhere for you. Eliza jerked back, guilty heat flooding her face. Colt stood slowly, his expression shuddering closed. Your fiancé was helping with my injury, he said flatly. That's all? Of course. But Thomas's eyes were cold. Eliza, your father's asking for you. She wanted to stay, wanted to tell Thomas exactly what she thought of his jealousy and possessiveness. But Papa needed her, so she went. That night, everything came to a head. Dr. Morrison checked Papa and delivered his verdict with clinical precision. 3 days, maybe 4. I'm sorry, Miss Warren, but you should prepare yourself. Eliza sat beside her father's makeshift bed, holding his frail hand, fighting back tears. Around them, the camp settled into uneasy sleep. Guards walked their rounds. Coyotes called in the distance. "Honey," Papa whispered, "come here." She leaned close. "That ranger," Martin said. "Colt, you love him, don't you?" Eliza's breath caught. "Papa, don't lie to a dying man. I've seen how you look at him, how he looks at you." Papa squeezed her hand weakly. "It's how I looked at your mama." "It doesn't matter. I'm engaged to Thomas. Because you think you should be, not because you want to be." Martin's eyes bored into hers. "Listen to me, Eliza. When I'm gone, and I will be gone soon, you get one life. One chance at happiness. Don't waste it on should. Don't waste it being scared. I don't know if he rode into hostile territory to save you. He disobeyed orders to keep you safe. He tore open his arm keeping a wagon from falling because he couldn't stand by and let people die." Papa smiled faintly. "Trust me, honey. He feels the same way." "Then what do I do?" "You be brave. You choose what your heart wants, and you don't apologize for it." Eliza pressed her face against her father's hand, tears finally spilling over. "I'm scared, Papa." "Good. Anything worth having is scary, but that ranger out there, he's worth being scared for." After Papa fell asleep, Eliza walked to the edge of camp. She needed air, needed to think, needed to figure out what the hell she was doing with her life. She found Colt sitting on a rock outcropping, keeping watch over the sleeping wagons. He didn't turn when she approached, but she knew he'd heard her. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked quietly. "Dr. Morrison says Papa has 3 days." Now Colt did turn, and in the moonlight his face was full of grief for her. "I'm sorry, Eliza. He told me something tonight." She sat beside him, not quite touching, but close enough to feel his warmth. "He told me to be brave, to choose what my heart wants." Colt went very still. "And what does your heart want?" Eliza looked at him, really looked at him. This hard, dangerous man who'd walked into her store like lightning striking, who'd come back even though he shouldn't have, who was sitting here now, keeping watch, keeping them all safe. "You," she whispered. "It wants you." The word hung between them, trembling with possibility. Then Colt's hand was in her hair, pulling her close, and his mouth found hers in a kiss that felt like coming home and catching fire all at once. Eliza gasped against his lips, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss, tasting her like a man dying of thirst. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more. His arm, the one that wasn't bandaged, wrapped around her waist, hauling her against him until no space remained between them. It was everything the kiss should have been 3 days ago, a week ago, the moment they first met, desperate and hungry and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Colt pressed his forehead to hers. "This is wrong," he said roughly. "You're engaged. I'm a ranger with no home and no future. This is the rightest thing I've felt in my entire life," Eliza finished. "Colt, I don't care about wrong. I don't care about proper. I care about this. About you. Thomas wants to marry a shopkeeper who'll give him children and keep his house. He doesn't want me. Not really. And I don't want him." "Eliza, you can't just, I can. I am." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Papa said I get one life, one chance at happiness. I'm choosing you, Colt Harrington, even if it's terrifying, even if I don't know how it works. I'm choosing you." She saw hope war with doubt in his face, saw him wanting to believe her, wanting to reach for this impossible thing. "What about after?" he asked quietly. "After your father? After the train reaches Judith Basin? What then?" "I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. I'm a ranger, Eliza. I don't stay in one place. I track outlaws through mountains and badlands. It's a hard life, a lonely life." "Then maybe it's time you stopped being lonely." Something broke in Colt's expression, some wall he'd built around his heart crumbling to dust. He kissed her again, softer this time, tender in a way that made her chest ache. "You're going to ruin me," he murmured against her lips. "Good," she whispered back. I plan to. They sat together until the moon set, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Colt told her about his past, about growing up rough in Texas, about joining the Rangers at 19, about
This
15
story
years
was
of drifting
posted on the
because
channel
he'd never
west
found
of
anything
Betrayal.
worth stopping for.
Please do not repost
Until
it in any
now.
form.
Eliza told him about her dreams of the ocean, her fear of wasting her life, her grief over watching Papa die slowly. He was right, Colt said finally. About being brave. Takes more courage to reach for happiness than it does to face down outlaws. Then we'll be brave together. As dawn approached, Eliza reluctantly headed back to her wagon. Tomorrow she'd talk to Thomas. Tomorrow she'd face the consequences of her choice. But tonight, wrapped in the memory of Colt's kiss, she felt more alive than she'd ever been. She was choosing love over safety, choosing wild over tame, choosing a ranger with winter gray eyes over everything she'd thought she wanted. And it was terrifying, and it was absolutely, completely right. Morning came too fast and not fast enough. Eliza lay awake in the wagon, listening to Papa's labored breathing, watching dawn paint the canvas cover gold. Her lips still burned from Colt's kiss. Her heart still raced with the memory of choosing him, of finally being brave enough to reach for what she wanted. But now, in the cold light of day, she had to face Thomas. She found him at the cook fire, organizing supplies with his usual meticulous precision. When he saw her approaching, his face hardened. "Eliza, I wondered when you'd appear. Thomas, we need to talk." "I imagine we do." He set down the supply list and crossed his arms. "About last night. About that ranger." She'd rehearsed this conversation in her head a dozen times, trying to find gentle words, kind words. But standing there facing him, she realized there was no gentle way to break someone's heart. "I can't marry you," she said simply. "I'm sorry, Thomas, but I can't." His face went white, then red. "Because of him. Because of Harrington. Because of me." Eliza kept her voice steady. "Because you deserve someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved, and I don't. I tried, Thomas. I really did try to be the woman you wanted, but I can't pretend anymore." "Pretend?" Thomas's voice rose. "We've been courting for 6 months. You accepted my proposal, and now, after 1 week with some drifter who will be gone the moment we reach Judith Basin, you're throwing everything away?" "He's not a drifter. He's a ranger who saved all our lives. He's a man with no home, no prospects, no future. What can he possibly offer you?" "Himself," Eliza said quietly. "That's all I want." Thomas stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "You're making a mistake, a terrible mistake. That man will break your heart." "Maybe, but it'll be my heart to break, my choice to make. I'm sorry, Thomas. I truly am. You're a good man. You'll make someone very happy someday. But that someone isn't me." She pulled off the simple gold ring he'd given her 3 months ago and pressed it into his hand. Thomas looked down at it, then back at her, and she saw genuine hurt in his eyes alongside the anger. "I hope he's worth it," Thomas said bitterly. "I hope when he rides away, and he will ride away, Eliza, I hope you remember that I would have stayed." He turned and walked off, shoulders stiff with wounded pride. Eliza felt guilt twist in her stomach, but underneath it was relief. Clean, pure relief. She'd done it. She'd chosen. Mrs. Henderson found her a few minutes later, eyes knowing and kind. "Saw you talking to Thomas. Saw his face when he walked away. I broke off the engagement. Figured as much." Mrs. Henderson squeezed her shoulder. "That ranger's a good man, dear. Saw him with the children yesterday. Patient as can be, helped little Billy carve a whistle. Takes a special kind of man to be gentle when he doesn't have to be." "You don't think I'm foolish?" "Foolish is marrying the wrong man because it's safe. Brave is choosing the right one, even when it's scary." She smiled. "Your papa would be proud." Papa. Eliza hurried back to the wagon and found him awake, his breathing even more labored than before. "There's my girl," he wheezed. "Come here." She sat beside him, taking his hand. It felt like bird bones wrapped in paper-thin skin. "I broke it off with Thomas," she said. Papa's face lit up with a smile that made him look 10 years younger. "Good. That's good, honey. Now you can—" A coughing fit seized him, violent and wet. When it passed, there was fresh blood on the handkerchief. "Papa, rest. Don't try to talk. Have to talk. Running out of time. He gripped her hand with surprising strength. That ranger, Colt, you tell him. Tell him to take care of you. Tell him if he hurts you, I'll haunt him. Papa, promise me, Eliza. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy. The tears blurred her vision. I promise. That's my brave girl. Papa's eyes drifted closed. So proud of you. So proud. Dr. Morrison appeared at the wagon opening, his expression grim. Miss Warren, I need to examine your father. She stepped outside and found Colt waiting nearby, leaning against a wagon wheel. When he saw her face, he straightened immediately. What's wrong? Papa's worse. Dr. Morrison says... She couldn't finish the sentence. Colt pulled her into his arms without hesitation, and Eliza let herself lean into his strength. He smelled like leather and pine and safety. I'm here, he murmured into her hair. Whatever happens, I'm here. I told Thomas. Broke off the engagement. She felt Colt tense. Eliza, don't. She pulled back to look at him. Don't tell me I shouldn't have. Don't tell me it was too soon or too rash. I chose you, Colt Harrington. I meant it. Something fierce and possessive blazed in his gray eyes. Then I'm the luckiest damn fool in Montana Territory. He kissed her there in broad daylight, in front of the whole camp, and Eliza didn't care who saw. Let them stare. Let them gossip. For the first time in her life, she was choosing what her heart wanted instead of what everyone expected. Captain Bellamy's voice boomed across the camp. Mount up! We're moving out! The wagons rolled on through increasingly hostile country. The Badlands gave way to broken prairie, dotted with coulees and ravines that could hide an army. Colt rode point, his eyes constantly scanning, his hand never far from his rifle. Around noon, he raised his fist, the signal to stop. What is it? Bellamy called, riding forward. Colt dismounted and knelt beside something in the dirt. When he stood, his face was grim. Tracks. Unshod ponies, maybe a dozen, heading east. Could be friendly, Thomas said hopefully. Crow, maybe, or peaceful Blackfoot. Could be. But Colt's tone said he didn't believe it. Everyone stay alert. Keep the wagons tight. They moved on, but tension hung over the company like a storm cloud. People stopped talking. Children sensed the adults' fear and grew quiet. Even the horses seemed nervous, ears swiveling at every sound. That night, they camped in a natural depression with good sight lines in all directions. Colt doubled the guards and personally checked every position. You should rest, Eliza told him when he finally paused by their wagon. You haven't slept in 2 days. Can't. Something's wrong. I can feel it. What do you mean? We're being watched. Have been for hours. His eyes scanned the darkness beyond the firelight. They're out there, Eliza. Ghost Hawk scouts. Maybe the whole war party. Ice formed in her stomach. What do we do? We stay alert. We stay together. And if something happens... He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. If something happens, you get Papa and you run. You don't wait for me. You don't look back. You run. Colt, promise me. No. She grabbed his hand. I won't promise to leave you. I won't. Eliza, I'm a ranger. This is what I do. But you and your father are part of your life now, whether you like it or not. She squeezed his hand hard. We face this together, Colt. All of it. He looked at her for a long moment, then pulled her close and kissed her forehead. You're going to be the death of me, woman. Or the life of you, she whispered back. The attack came at dawn. Eliza woke to screaming and gunfire. She rolled out of her bedroll, heart hammering, and scrambled to the wagon opening. Outside was chaos, warriors on painted ponies circling the camp, firing arrows and rifles, whooping war cries that turned her blood to ice. Papa! She turned to find him struggling to sit up, his face gray with pain and fear. Stay down! Stay down! Mrs. Henderson appeared, remarkably calm for a woman under attack. Get him to the center of the camp! Move! They half-carried, half-dragged Papa out of the wagon, just as an arrow thudded into the canvas where his head had been seconds before. Eliza's hands shook so badly she could barely hold him, but Henderson was there, steady and strong, guiding them toward the center where women and children huddled behind overturned wagons. Where's Colt? Eliza gasped. Fighting, Henderson said grimly. They all are. The men had formed a defensive perimeter, firing at the circling warriors. Colt was in the thick of it, his rifle barking steadily.
This story was
his face
posted on the
set in
channel
hard
west
lines.
of Betrayal.
Even from
Please
a
do not
distance, Eliza
repost
could
it
see
in any
he was
form.
in his element. This was what he'd been trained for, what he knew. But there were so many warriors. At least 50, maybe more, and they kept coming in waves. We can't hold them, someone shouted. There's too many. An arrow caught Henderson in the shoulder, spinning him around. His wife screamed, but the big man just yanked the arrow out with a grunt and kept firing. The attack lasted maybe 10 minutes, though it felt like hours. Then, as suddenly as they'd appeared, the warriors pulled back, retreating to the ridgeline surrounding the camp. An eerie silence fell. Is everyone alive? Captain Bellamy called out. Sound off. They counted heads. 3 men wounded, 1 seriously. Young Cooper, the outrider who'd collapsed from exposure, had taken an arrow to the leg. But miraculously, no one was dead. Yet. Colt gathered the men, his face grave. That was just a probe. They're testing our defenses, seeing how we fight. The real attack will come soon. How many? Bellamy asked. I counted at least 60 warriors, probably more hidden in those coulees. Thomas, his face white with fear, spoke up. Can we negotiate? Offer them something? Ghost Hawk doesn't negotiate, Colt said flatly. He kills or he moves on. Those are the options. Then what do we do? Mrs. Bellamy's voice was shrill with panic. We can't fight 60 warriors. Colt looked around at the frightened faces, at the wounded men, at the women clutching children. Eliza saw the calculation in his eyes, saw him weighing impossible choices. We need help, he said finally. Fort Benton is maybe 30 miles northeast. If I can get there, I can bring back soldiers. That's suicide, Henderson said. You'll never make it through their lines. I have to try. It's the only chance. Then we'll all go, Bellamy said. Make a run for it together. You won't make it 2 miles with the wagons. They'd run you down like rabbits. Colt's voice was hard as iron. But if I draw them off, lead them away from here, you might have time to fortify this position, maybe last until I get back with help. Understanding dawned on Eliza with sickening clarity. He was going to sacrifice himself, ride out alone to draw the war party away, knowing he'd probably die. No, she said, pushing through the crowd. Absolutely not. Colt's eyes met hers, and she saw grief and determination in them. Eliza, you can't do this. You'll be killed. Maybe, but it's the only play we have. There has to be another way. There isn't. He took her shoulders gently. You know there isn't. Tears burned her eyes. I just found you. I'm not losing you now. You're not going to lose me, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm a ranger, remember? I've been in worse spots. Liar? She grabbed his shirt with both hands. You're a terrible liar, Colt Harrington. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, in front of everyone. When he pulled back, his thumb brushed away her tears. If I don't make it, don't you dare. Don't you dare say goodbye to me. If I don't make it, he continued firmly, you get to Fort Benton any way you can. Tell Colonel Harrison that Ghost Hawk's war party is here. He'll send help. He pressed something into her hand, his ranger badge. This'll get you past any patrols. Colt, please. But he was already moving, already checking his rifle and pistol, already preparing to die for them. The men gathered around him, shaking his hand, thanking him. Mrs. Henderson hugged him fiercely. Even Thomas, despite everything, nodded with grudging respect. You're a brave man, Harrington, Bellamy said gruffly. Godspeed. Colt swung into his saddle, and his bay horse, that rangy, faithful animal, stamped nervously, sensing danger. He looked down at Eliza one last time. Take care of your father. Be brave. And Eliza? A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. I'm glad I walked into your store that night. Colt? But he was already riding, already galloping toward the eastern ridge where the warriors waited. Eliza watched him go, her heart breaking with every hoofbeat. He reached the ridge and fired his rifle into the air, once, twice, 3 times. A challenge, a taunt. Come and get me! The warriors responded with war cries. Eliza saw them mounting, saw them turning to pursue this lone rider who dared challenge them. Colt kicked his horse into a dead run, heading northeast, and the war party followed like a pack of wolves after a wounded elk. Within minutes, they'd all disappeared over the horizon. The camp fell silent except for the wind and someone's quiet sobbing. "He did it," Bellamy said, awed. "He actually drew them off." "He's going to die," Eliza heard herself say. Her voice sounded distant, hollow. "They're going to kill him." "Maybe," Henderson said gently. "Or maybe he'll make it. He's a tough son of a gun." But Eliza could do the math. 1 man against 60 warriors? The odds were impossible. Colt had just ridden to his death to save them, and she'd let him go. She stood there frozen, watching the empty horizon, while chaos erupted around her. Bellamy was shouting orders, organizing defenses. The women were tending the wounded. Someone was praying loudly, and all Eliza could think was, "I just found him. I just chose him. And now he's gone." "No," she whispered, then louder. "No." Mrs. Henderson looked at her. "Dear," but Eliza was already moving, already running toward the horses. Her mind had gone crystal clear, sharp as broken glass. She knew what she had to do. "Eliza," Thomas called after her, "what are you doing?" She found a saddled horse, Henderson's mare, and swung up before anyone could stop her. "Eliza, wait!" Bellamy grabbed the bridle. "You can't go after him. Watch me. You'll be killed. Then I'll be killed." She kicked the horse forward, forcing Bellamy to let go or be trampled. "But I'm not letting him die alone." "Someone stop her!" Thomas was running now. "She's gone mad!" But Eliza was already galloping, already racing after Colt, after the war party, after her own death probably, and she didn't care. She'd spent 23 years being safe, being sensible, being scared. Not anymore. Papa had told her to be brave. Colt had shown her what real courage looked like. And now it was her turn. She rode hard, following the obvious trail, dozens of unshod hoofprints heading northeast. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The Henderson mare was fast, fresher than Colt's horse, and Eliza pushed her mercilessly. After 20 minutes, she heard it. Gunfire in the distance, war cries, the sounds of battle. She crested a rise and saw them. Colt was in a dry riverbed, maybe half a mile ahead, his horse down, using its body as cover while he fired at the warriors circling above. Even from here, Eliza could see blood on his shirt, could see he was wounded. The warriors were closing in, taking their time, playing with him like cats with a mouse. Eliza didn't think. Thinking would have made her turn back. Instead, she pulled Henderson's pistol from the saddle holster, kicked her horse into a gallop, and rode straight down the slope toward them. She fired into the air, once, twice, 3 times, screaming at the top of her lungs. The effect was instantaneous. Half the warriors turned toward this new threat, this crazy woman charging at them like a Valkyrie. "Run, you bastards!" Eliza screamed, firing again. "Come get me!" She saw Colt's head snap up, saw his face go white with horror and fury. He was shouting something, but she couldn't hear over the pounding of hooves and her own racing heartbeat. Several warriors peeled off from the main group, wheeling their ponies to intercept her. Good. That's what she wanted. Draw them away. Give Colt a chance. She turned the mare hard, racing parallel to the riverbed now, leading the pursuing warriors away from Colt. Arrows whistled past her head. One caught her sleeve, tearing the fabric. Another grazed the mare's flank, making the horse scream and run faster. Eliza fired back blindly, knowing she'd never hit anything but hoping the noise would keep them interested. Keep them chasing her instead of killing Colt. She'd covered maybe 200 yards when the mare stumbled. Just for a second, just a tiny misstep on loose rock. But it was enough. The horse went down hard, throwing Eliza clear. She hit the ground rolling, somehow keeping hold of the pistol, coming up on her knees with her ears ringing and blood in her mouth. The warriors were closing in, maybe 30 yards away, slowing now that she was unhorsed. She saw their faces, young men, fierce and painted for war. She saw their weapons, bows, rifles, war clubs. She was going to die here. Strangely, she wasn't scared. She'd made her choice. She'd been brave. And if these were her last moments, at least they were hers. Eliza raised the pistol with shaking hands and aimed at the nearest warrior. Then Colt was there. He came out of nowhere, his bay horse somehow still alive after all, somehow still running. He crashed into the warrior's line like thunder, his rifle firing point blank, his face twisted in rage and desperation. "Get away from her!" His voice was
This story
raw with
was
fury.
posted on the channel
"Get
west
away!"
of Betrayal.
He fought
Please
like
do
a
not
demon,
repost it
shooting,
in any
clubbing
form.
with his rifle when it was empty, then drawing his knife when that was gone. Blood streamed from a wound in his side, another on his shoulder, but he kept moving, kept fighting, putting his body between Eliza and the warriors. She scrambled to her feet, still clutching the pistol. 3 shots left. She made them count, firing at any warrior who got close to Colt, but there were still too many. They were being surrounded, pressed together back to back, fighting for their lives in a shrinking circle. "You're insane," Colt gasped, bleeding from a dozen wounds. "You're the craziest woman I've ever met. I couldn't let you die alone." "So you thought you'd die with me? That's your plan?" "Better than the alternative." An arrow caught Eliza's shoulder, spinning her around. Pain exploded white hot, but she stayed on her feet, switching the pistol to her other hand. 2 shots left. Colt's knife flashed, catching a warrior's arm, forcing him back. But another was coming from behind, raising a war club. Eliza shot him. Her last 2 bullets, both center mass. The warrior fell. The pistol clicked empty. They were done. Finished. Colt pressed his back to hers, knife in one hand, nothing in the other, preparing to die. "I love you," Eliza heard herself say. "I should have said it before. I love you." "I know." His hand found hers, squeezed hard. "I love you too." The warriors closed in. Then the bugle sounded, clear and bright and impossibly beautiful, a cavalry bugle calling the charge. Eliza turned her head and saw them, blue uniformed soldiers cresting the rise, at least 30 of them, riding hard with rifles raised. The cavalry from Fort Benton. The warriors heard it too. For a moment everything froze, a tableau of violence suspended in time. Then Ghost Hawk's men were retreating, scattering like leaves in wind, abandoning the fight in the face of overwhelming force. The soldiers swept past Eliza and Colt in pursuit, their lieutenant pausing just long enough to shout, "Colonel Harrison sends his regards, Harrington. He figured you might need help." Then they were gone, chasing the war party into the Badlands, and Eliza and Colt were alone in the sudden, deafening silence. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Colt turned, grabbed Eliza's face with both bloody hands, and kissed her like she was air and he was drowning. "Don't you ever," he gasped against her mouth, "ever do something that stupid again. You rode out to die. What was I supposed to do? Not follow me? Not nearly get yourself killed?" He was shaking, either from blood loss or emotion or both. "Eliza, when I saw you riding at those warriors, when I thought they were going to—" His voice broke. "I've never been that scared in my entire life." "Good." She kissed him fiercely despite her wounded shoulder, despite the blood and pain and fear. "Now you know how I felt watching you ride away." "You're insane. You said that already." "You're brave and insane, and I'm never letting you out of my sight again. Promise?" "Promise." He pulled her close, carefully, mindful of their wounds, and held her like he'd never let go. "You crazy, wonderful woman. You rode into a war party for me." "Of course I did." Eliza pressed her face against his chest, feeling his heart hammer under her cheek. "I love you. What else would I do?" More soldiers appeared, including a weathered colonel with a gray beard and sharp eyes. "Harrington," Colonel Harrison said,
This story was
dismounting,
posted on
"I
the
expected
channel
to find your
west of
corpse out
Betrayal.
here."
Please do
"Who's
not
the girl?"
repost it in any
"Eliza
form.
Warren, sir. She's—" Colt looked down at her, and his face held wonder and love and exasperation all at once. "She's the woman who saved my life." "Looks like you both saved each other." Harrison gestured to a medic. "Get them patched up. We've got a wagon train to escort back to Fort." As the medic worked on their wounds, cleaning, stitching, bandaging, Eliza leaned against Colt and watched the sun sink toward the horizon. They were alive. Against all odds, impossibly, they were alive. "Your father?" Colt asked quietly. "Still at the camp, still dying." Her voice caught. "I need to get back to him." "We will. Harrison's sending soldiers to bring the whole train to Fort Benton. Your father will have real medical care there." "Will it be enough?" "I don't know, love. I honestly don't know." The medic finished and moved on to other wounded soldiers. Colt and Eliza sat together on the ground, too exhausted to stand, watching darkness gather. "What happens now?" Eliza asked. "Now, we go to Fort Benton, get everyone safe, then—" He threaded his fingers through hers. "Then I finish my ranger commission, 3 more months. After that, I'm done." Done being a ranger? Done drifting, done being alone. He turned to face her. "I told you I gave up on deserving better a long time ago, but you changed that. You made me want something I thought I'd never have." "What's that?" "Home." The word came out rough, like it hurt to say. "A place to belong, someone to come back to." He cupped her face gently. "You, Eliza. I want you. You have me." She kissed his palm. "For as long as you want me. Then I hope you like forever, because that's how long I'm planning to keep you." Around them, soldiers made camp, lit fires, posted guards. The war party was gone, scattered into the Montana wilderness. Tomorrow they'd return to the wagon train, then escort everyone to safety. Tomorrow they'd face whatever came next. But tonight, sitting under the vast Montana sky with the man she loved, Eliza felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She'd been brave. She'd faced death and chosen love anyway, and somehow, impossibly, they'd both survived. Papa would be proud. She was proud of herself. The girl who'd stood behind a store counter dreaming of adventure had finally found it, not in distant oceans or foreign ports, but here, in the wild Montana territory, in the arms of a ranger who'd shown her what it meant to truly live. "What are you thinking?" Colt asked, pulling her closer. "That I was wrong," Eliza said. "About the ocean, about needing to leave to find adventure." "How so?" "Adventure isn't a place. It's a choice." She looked up at him. "It's choosing to be brave, choosing to love even when it's scary, choosing to ride after a stubborn ranger even when it's probably suicide." Colt laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "Then you, Miss Warren, are the most adventurous woman I've ever met." "Good." She settled against him, ignoring the ache of her wounds. "Because I plan to spend the rest of my life being adventurous with you." "Is that a proposal?" "Maybe. Would you say yes? To spending my life with a woman crazy enough to charge a war party with 3 bullets in pure fury?" His arms tightened around her. "Absolutely. Without question. Forever and always." They sat together as stars emerged overhead, and somewhere in the distance a wolf howled, lonely and wild and free. Eliza thought about the life she'd left behind in Helena, the safe, predictable future she'd almost chosen. She didn't regret leaving it for a second. This, bloody, dangerous, uncertain, this was real. This was alive. This was everything she'd been too scared to reach for until a cowboy walked into her store during a rainstorm and changed everything. "Colt?" "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For coming back, for staying, for letting me be brave enough to choose you." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Thank you for choosing me. I didn't know I was worth choosing until you did." "Then we're both fools," Eliza murmured, feeling exhaustion finally catch up with her. "Because we're definitely worth choosing." "Definitely," Colt agreed and held her until she slept. They rode back to the wagon train at first light, flanked by 20 cavalry soldiers. Eliza sat in front of Colt on his bay horse, his arms around her, both of them wrapped in borrowed army blankets. Every movement sent pain shooting through her wounded shoulder, but she didn't care. They were alive. Colonel Harrison rode beside them, his weathered face thoughtful as he studied Colt. "You planning to make a habit of this, Harrington?" the colonel asked. "Disobeying orders to save settlers?" "No, sir," Colt said quietly. "Good, because I can't keep covering for you." Harrison's voice was gruff, but not unkind. "That said, you saved 47 lives yesterday. The territorial governor will want to hear about it." "I don't need recognition, sir. I just need to make sure they reach Fort Benton safely." "You'll get both whether you want them or not." Harrison glanced at Eliza. "And this young lady who charged a war party with 3 bullets? She'll be famous too. People love a good story about courage." Eliza felt her cheeks heat. "I wasn't being courageous, Colonel. I was being terrified." That's what courage is, ma'am.
This
Being
story was
terrified and doing
posted
it
on the
anyway.
channel west
He
of
tipped his
Betrayal.
hat to her.
Please
Your
do not
father should be
repost
proud.
it in any form.
Papa. Her chest tightened. She'd left him dying in a wagon to chase after Colt. What if he'd passed while she was gone? What if the last thing he'd seen was his daughter abandoning him? Faster, she told Colt urgently. Can we go faster? He understood immediately. He kicked the bay into a canter, and they pulled ahead of the column, racing toward the camp. They found it still standing, the wagons circled defensively, guards posted on every approach. Captain Bellamy saw them coming and shouted for the gates to open. Harrington! Miss Warren! You're alive! Eliza barely heard him. She was already sliding off the horse, running toward her wagon, despite the pain in her shoulder, despite Colt calling her name. Papa! She scrambled inside and found him exactly where she'd left him, propped on pillows, Mrs. Henderson sitting beside him with a damp cloth. Martin Warren's eyes opened, focusing slowly on his daughter's face. When recognition dawned, he smiled. There's my brave girl, he whispered. You came back. Of course I came back. Eliza grabbed his hand, tears streaming down her face. Papa, I'm so sorry I left. I'm sorry I... Hush now. You did what you had to do. His gaze moved past her to where Colt stood in the wagon opening. And you brought your cowboy back alive. That's all that matters. Mrs. Henderson stood wiping her own eyes. I'll give you some privacy. She squeezed Eliza's good shoulder and climbed past Colt, pausing to whisper something in his ear that made his jaw tighten. When they were alone, Martin gestured weakly for Colt to come closer. Mr. Warren, Colt began, I want to apologize for saving my daughter's life? For giving her a reason to be brave? Martin's laugh turned into a cough, but his eyes were bright. Don't you dare apologize, son. You gave her what I couldn't, adventure, purpose, love. That's everything a father could want. Papa, you need to rest, Eliza said, but Martin shook his head. I'll rest soon enough. Right now, I need to say this. He looked between them. I'm dying. We all know it. Could be today, could be a week. But when I go, I need to know my girl will be taken care of. I'll take care of her, Colt said immediately. I swear it, sir, with my life. I know you will. I saw it yesterday when you rode out to die for these people. Saw it in how you looked at her. Martin squeezed Eliza's hand. But I'm not talking about protection. I'm talking about love, about giving her the life she deserves. Can you do that? Colt's throat worked. I'll spend the rest of my life trying. Good. Martin settled back against the pillows, satisfied. Then you have my blessing, both of you. Be happy. Be brave. That's all I ask. Captain Bellamy's voice boomed from outside. Everyone prepare to move. Fort Benton's a day's ride with the cavalry escort. The wagon train rolled out within the hour, now surrounded by soldiers in crisp blue uniforms. The atmosphere had completely changed. Where before there'd been fear and tension, now there was relief and celebration. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, they'd survived. Thomas rode near the back of the column, his face carefully blank. He hadn't spoken to Eliza since she'd broken off their engagement, hadn't even looked at her. She felt guilt twist in her stomach, but underneath it was still that clean relief. By mid-afternoon, Papa had fallen into a deep sleep that worried both Eliza and Mrs. Henderson. His breathing was shallow, his skin waxy and pale. Is he... Eliza couldn't finish
This story
the
was
question.
posted
Not
on the
yet,
channel
dear,
west
but
of
soon.
Betrayal. Please
Mrs.
do not
Henderson's voice
repost
was
it in
gentle.
any form.
I've seen enough death to know. He's holding on for something. Maybe to reach the fort, maybe just to see you settled. Eliza climbed out of the wagon and found Colt riding alongside, keeping pace with them. When he saw her face, he immediately dismounted and walked beside the wagon. How is he? So, fading. Mrs. Henderson thinks he's holding on until we reach Fort Benton. She wiped her eyes. I don't want him to go, Colt. I'm not ready. No one's ever ready. He took her hand, not caring who saw. But you'll survive it. You're the strongest woman I've ever met. I don't feel strong. You charged a war party yesterday. You rode into certain death to save me. If that's not strong, I don't know what is. They walked in silence for a while, the wagon creaking beneath Papa's labored breathing, the cavalry horses maintaining their steady pace around them. After, Eliza said quietly, after Papa passes, what happens to us? She felt Colt tense. What do you mean? You said your commission ends in 3 months. Then what? Do you take another assignment? Ride off to track criminals somewhere else? I don't know yet. You don't know, or you don't want to tell me? Colt stopped walking, and Eliza turned to face him. His gray eyes were troubled, conflicted. I've been thinking about that, he said slowly. About us. About what happened yesterday. Cold dread settled in her stomach. Don't what? Don't do what you're about to do. Don't try to push me away because you think it's for my own good. Eliza, we almost died yesterday, Colt. We told each other we loved each other while warriors closed in for the kill. You can't take that back now just because we survived. I'm not trying to take it back. His voice was rough with emotion. I'm trying to be realistic. Yesterday was extreme circumstances. Life or death. The things we felt, the things we said, were true. She grabbed his shirt with her good hand. Don't you dare tell me what I felt wasn't real. Don't you dare diminish it. I'm not. But feelings born in danger don't always survive peace. When things calm down, when life gets normal, you might realize what? That I don't actually love you? That I only thought I did because you saved my life? Eliza's voice rose, and several people turned to look. She didn't care. Is that what you think? That I'm some confused girl who can't tell the difference between gratitude and love? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Colt dragged a hand through his hair, frustration and fear warring on his face. I'm saying that I'm a ranger with no home, no prospects, no future outside of tracking criminals through the wilderness. I'm saying you deserve better than following me from one dangerous assignment to the next. I'm saying, his voice cracked, I'm saying I don't know how to be what you need. And I'm saying you don't get to decide what I need. Eliza stepped closer, her eyes blazing. I broke off my engagement for you. I rode into a war party for you. I chose you, Colt Harrington, knowing exactly what you are and what kind of life you lead. Don't treat me like I'm too naive to understand what I'm choosing. You're not naive. You're brave and strong and everything good in this world. That's exactly why I'm trying to protect me from yourself? She laughed bitterly. I don't need protection. I need you to be honest with me. Do you love me or not? Of course I love you. The words burst out of him like they'd been trapped. I've loved you since the moment you stitched my arm in your store and looked at me like I was something more than just another drifter. I love you so much it terrifies me. Then why are you trying to push me away? Because I don't know how to do this. His voice was raw, vulnerable, in a way she'd never heard. I've been alone for 15 years, Eliza. I don't know how to be with someone. I don't know how to build a life, make a home, be the kind of man you deserve. And I'm scared. God, I'm so scared that you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake choosing me. The confession hung between them, stark and honest. Eliza saw the truth in his face. Not that he didn't want her, but that he wanted her so much he couldn't believe he deserved her. You idiot, she said softly, reaching up to cup his face. You beautiful, stubborn idiot. Eliza. I didn't ride into that war party because of fear or impulse or adrenaline. I rode in because I saw my future riding away from me, and I couldn't let that happen. It wasn't panic, it was clarity. She held his gaze. You are what I want, Colt. Not the perfect life Thomas was offering, not safety or respectability or any of the things I'm supposed to want. You, just you. Even knowing I don't have anything to offer you, you're offering me yourself, that's everything. Colt closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, right there in front of the entire wagon train. Someone whistled. Someone else cheered. Eliza heard Mrs. Henderson's delighted laugh. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Colt pressed his forehead to hers. 3 months, he said, when my commission ends. I'm done being a ranger. You don't have to quit for me. I'm not quitting for you. I'm quitting for us. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I've been drifting for 15 years because I had nothing to come home to. Now I do. Now I have you. And I'll be damned if I'm going to spend my life riding away when what I really want is right here. What will you do instead? I don't know yet. But I've been thinking. He hesitated, like he was afraid to voice the dream out loud. There's land in the Judith Basin. Good land. Open range. Near water. I've been saving my pay for years with no real plan for it. I could. He trailed off. You could what? Buy land. Build something. Make a real home instead of just places I sleep between assignments. The words came faster now, like a dam breaking. I know it's not much. I know it's hard work and uncertain and nothing like the comfortable life Thomas could have given you. Stop comparing yourself to Thomas. I didn't choose Thomas. I chose you. A ranch in the middle of nowhere, long winters, harder summers, no neighbors for miles. That's what I'm offering, Eliza. Is that really what you want? She thought about it, really thought about it. Not the store in Helena, not Thomas's careful plans, not the safe, predictable life she'd almost accepted. Instead, open sky, endless land, a life built with her own hands alongside a man who'd shown her what it meant to truly live. Adventure not as a destination, but as a daily choice. Freedom, purpose, love. Yes, she said simply, that's exactly what I want. The joy that blazed across Colt's face was worth every risk she'd taken, every fear she'd conquered. He lifted her off her feet, carefully, mindful of her wounded shoulder, and spun her around while soldiers and settlers alike applauded. You're sure? He asked when he set her down. Absolutely sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. From inside the wagon, Papa's weak voice called out. Did I hear right? Are you two finally getting married? Eliza climbed back inside, Colt right behind her. Papa looked terrible, pale and drawn, but his eyes sparkled with happiness. Not married yet, Papa, but soon. Good. That's good. Martin reached out, and Colt took his frail hand. You take care of her, son. Give her that ranch she's talking about. Give her adventures and love and everything she deserves. I will, sir, I promise. And Eliza? Papa turned to his daughter. You make sure he lets himself be happy. Stubborn men like him need women like you to remind them life's worth living. I will, Papa. Tears streamed down her face. I promise. Martin settled back with a contented sigh. Then I can rest easy. My girl's going to be happy. That's all a father needs to know. Fort Benton appeared on the horizon the next afternoon, a sturdy military outpost perched above the Missouri River. Captain Bellamy let out a whoop of relief when he saw it, and the entire wagon train picked up speed. They rolled through the fort's gates to cheers and celebration. Soldiers and their families had gathered to greet them, having heard about the battle with Ghost Hawk's war party. People wanted to shake Colt's hand, wanted to hear Eliza's story, wanted to celebrate their survival. But Eliza barely noticed. She was focused on getting Papa to the fort's hospital, on finding the doctor Colonel Harrison had promised was here. Dr. Jameson was a gray-haired man with kind eyes and competent hands. He examined Papa thoroughly while Eliza hovered anxiously nearby. Well? She asked when he finally stepped back. Your father has advanced consumption, Dr. Jameson said gently. I can make him comfortable, manage his pain, but I can't cure him. I'm sorry, Miss Warren. It's only a matter of time. How much time? Days. Maybe a week if he's strong. He squeezed
This story
her shoulder.
was posted on the channel
But I
west
promise
of
you this,
Betrayal.
He won't
Please
die
do
in
not
pain.
repost
I'll
it
see to
in any
that.
form.
True to his word, Dr. Jameson moved Papa to a private room in the hospital and administered laudanum to ease his breathing. For the first time in weeks, Martin Warren rested peacefully, his face relaxed. Eliza sat beside his bed, holding his hand, watching him sleep. Colt sat with her, a silent presence offering strength just by being there. Colonel Harrison appeared in the doorway. Miss Warren, may I have a word? She stepped outside and Harrison handed her an envelope. Governor's orders. You and Harrington are to be officially commended for exceptional courage in the defense of settlers. There's also a reward, $200, for your actions against Ghost Hawk's war party. $200. A fortune to someone like Eliza. Enough to buy supplies, livestock, everything they'd need to start that ranch Colt had dreamed about. Thank you, Colonel. Don't thank me. You earned it. He paused. Your fiancé, Thomas Avery, he left this morning, took a supply wagon back to Helena, didn't even wait to see if your father recovered. Eliza felt a flash of anger, but mostly relief. He wasn't my fiancé anymore. I broke it off before the attack. I figured, man who'd abandon a woman like you doesn't deserve her anyway. Harrison tipped his hat. Harrington's a good man, Miss Warren. Stubborn as hell, but good. You chose well. After he left, Eliza stood in the hallway, clutching the envelope, feeling the weight of it. $200. Papa dying peacefully. Colt waiting for her. Thomas gone. Everything was ending and beginning at the same time. She went back inside and found Colt had pulled his chair close to Papa's bed. He looked up when she entered. The governor's giving us a commendation, she said. And $200. That's enough to buy land, Colt said quietly. Good land. Maybe 50 acres with water rights. Is that enough for a ranch? It's enough for a start. He stood and moved to her, taking her hands. Eliza, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me. Her heart clenched. Okay. For 15 years, I did my duty. I tracked criminals, protected settlers, enforced the law. I told myself that was enough, that duty was all I needed. He squeezed her hands. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. I was just too scared to admit I wanted more. More what? More everything. A home. A life. Someone to build something with. His voice dropped to a rough whisper. You're the first thing I've ever wanted for myself, Eliza. Not because I should want it or because it's the right thing. Because my heart, this stupid, broken heart, it wants you more than anything else in this world. Colt, let me finish, please. He took a shaky breath. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a husband or build a home or any of the normal things people do. But I want to learn. I want to try. With you. If you'll have me. It wasn't a proposal. Not quite. But it was close. It was Colt being vulnerable, being honest, offering her his broken, hopeful heart. I'll have you, she said simply. Broken parts and all. I'll have you forever if you'll let me. Forever sounds good. He pulled her close, carefully, always careful of her wounded shoulder. God, Eliza, what did I do to deserve you? You walked into my store during a rainstorm. You let me be brave. You showed me what it means to really live. She smiled against his chest. That's more than enough. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while Papa slept peacefully nearby, while Fort Benton bustled beyond the walls, while their future waited like an unopened gift. That night, the fort threw a celebration. Tables were set up in the courtyard, food appeared from somewhere, and someone produced a fiddle. People danced and sang, celebrating survival, celebrating life. Captain Bellamy made a speech about courage and divine providence. Colonel Harrison told the story of the battle, embellishing certain parts until Eliza barely recognized it. Someone proposed a toast to the brave ranger and his fearless woman. Eliza sat with Colt at the edge of the celebration, watching but not quite part of it. Her shoulder throbbed despite the laudanum. Exhaustion pulled at her bones, but she felt peaceful. You should be resting, Colt said, noticing her wince when she moved wrong. So should you. You got shot twice yesterday. Grazed, there's a difference. You're bleeding through your bandages right now. He looked down at his shirt where fresh blood was indeed seeping through. Damn, I didn't even notice. Idiot. But she said it fondly. Come on, let's get that changed before you bleed to death at your own celebration. They slipped away from the party and headed to the hospital. Dr. Jameson was making evening rounds, and he tutted disapprovingly when he saw Colt's bandages. Ranger Harrington, I specifically told you to rest, not dance around at parties. I wasn't dancing. Sitting still then, whatever it is you people do at celebrations. The doctor cleaned and rebandaged the wounds with efficient movements. There. Now both of you go rest. That's an order. They checked on Papa, still sleeping peacefully, then headed to the small quarters Colonel Harrison had assigned them. Separate rooms, of course, because propriety still mattered, even after everything they'd been through. At Eliza's door, Colt paused. 3 months, he said again. When my commission ends, then I'm filing papers on land in Judith Basin, building a house, starting that ranch I've been dreaming about. We, Eliza corrected. We're filing papers. We're building. We're starting. We, he agreed, and the words sounded good. Right. Eliza Warren, are you proposing we build a life together? I suppose I am. She leaned up, carefully, and kissed him softly. Is that a problem, Ranger? Not even a little bit. He returned the kiss, deeper this time, full of promise. In fact, I'm counting on it. When they finally parted, both reluctant to separate, Colt touched her cheek gently. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being brave enough to choose me, for showing me what I was missing, for making me want to stop drifting and start living. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. For everything, really. You're welcome. But Colt? She caught his hand. You gave me just as much. You showed me what real courage looks like. You made me brave enough to reach for what I wanted instead of settling for what I should want. You saved me every bit as much as I saved you. Then we're even. No. She grinned. I'm definitely ahead. I got the better end of this deal. Keep telling yourself that, woman. He kissed her once more, quick and sweet, then headed to his own quarters. Eliza watched him go, feeling her heart so full it might burst. Inside her room, she sat on the narrow bed and opened the envelope Colonel Harrison had given her. $200 in crisp bills. A small fortune. The start of a new life. She thought about Papa lying in that hospital bed, peaceful for the first time in months. She thought about Colt in the next room, probably lying awake thinking about ranches and futures. She thought about Thomas somewhere on the trail back to Helena, nursing his wounded pride. And she thought about herself. Eliza Warren, who'd spent 23 years being dutiful and scared and safe, who'd finally found the courage to choose adventure over security, love over comfort, wild over tame. She'd lost so much in the past weeks, her home, her plans, her father's health, but she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. She'd gained herself. And tomorrow, when the sun rose over Fort Benton, she'd start building a future with a man who looked at her like she hung the moon. A future full of hard work and uncertainty and adventure. Exactly the life she'd always dreamed of. Eliza lay back on the bed, smiling at the ceiling, and fell asleep with Colt's name on her lips and hope in her heart. 3 days later, Martin Warren passed peacefully in his sleep. Dr. Jameson said he simply stopped breathing, no pain, no struggle, just a quiet slip from sleep into death. Eliza was sitting beside him when it happened, holding his hand, and for a moment she thought he was still sleeping. Then she realized the room was too quiet. No labored breathing, no wet coughing, just silence. "Papa?" she whispered, even though she knew. "Papa." Colt appeared in the doorway. He'd been keeping vigil outside, and one look at her face told him everything. He was at her side in an instant, pulling her close while she shook with silent sobs. "He was peaceful," she managed. "Dr. Jameson was right. No pain at the end." "That's good. That's what he wanted." I know it is, but I already miss him so much." "I know, love, I know." They buried Martin Warren in the Fort Benton Cemetery the next day, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The entire wagon train attended, Captain Bellamy, the Hendersons, even people who'd barely known Papa. Colonel Harrison said a few words about courage and sacrifice. Father O'Brien from
This
the wagon
story was
train led them
posted
in
on the
prayer,
channel west
but it was
of the
Eliza
trail.
who spoke
Please
last,
do not repost
standing
it
at the
in any
grave
form.
with Colt's hand in hers, saying goodbye to the man who'd taught her to be brave. "Papa always told me I should reach for what I wanted instead of settling for what was safe," she said, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. "He told me to have adventures, to live fully, to not waste my one chance at happiness. And in the end, he gave me his blessing to do exactly that." She squeezed Colt's hand. "So, Papa, wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for loving me enough to let me go. Thank you for seeing what I needed even when I couldn't see it myself. Thank you for everything." Or, after the service, people offered condolences and drifted away. Soon, only Colt and Eliza remained, standing at the fresh grave while afternoon shadows lengthened. "He was a good man," Colt said quietly. "The best." Eliza wiped her eyes. "He would have loved what we're planning. The ranch, the life we're building. He would have been so happy. Then we'll build it for him too. We'll make it something he'd be proud of. Promise? Promise. Colt turned her to face him. Eliza, I know this isn't the right time. I know you're grieving and everything's raw. But I need to ask you something. Her heart kicked up despite everything. What? He pulled something from his pocket, a simple gold band, worn but beautiful. This was my mother's ring. Only thing I have from her. I've been carrying it for 20 years with no idea what to do with it. He held it up between them. But now I know. Now I want to give it to you. If you'll have it. If you'll marry me. Eliza stared at the ring, then at Colt's face. This hard, beautiful man who'd walked into her life like lightning striking. Who'd shown her what it meant to be brave. Who was offering her his mother's ring and his entire future. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and kissed her there in the cemetery while Papa's spirit smiled down on them. When? Colt asked when they finally broke apart. Soon. I don't want to wait. Neither do I. But tradition says tradition can wait. Eliza looked up at him fiercely. We almost died, Colt. We charged into a war party knowing we probably wouldn't survive. Life's too short to wait for the proper mourning period or the right season or whatever else tradition demands. I want to marry you now, tomorrow, as soon as possible. The fort chaplain could do it, if you're sure. I've never been more sure of anything. So they were married the next afternoon in the fort chapel, with Colonel Harrison and Mrs. Henderson as witnesses. Eliza wore a simple blue dress Mrs. Henderson had lent her. Colt wore his cleanest shirt and his ranger badge. The chaplain's service was brief and beautiful. Do you, Colt Harrington, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, certain. And do you, Eliza Warren, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. She squeezed his hands. Absolutely I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride, Ranger. Colt did, and Eliza felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She was Mrs. Harrington now, a ranger's wife, a woman building a future on her own terms. That night, in the small quarters Colonel Harrison had given them, Colt held her close and talked about the future. 2 months and 3 weeks until my commission ends, he said, trailing his fingers through her hair. Then we file on that land in Judith Basin, build a cabin before winter, buy livestock in the spring. That's a lot of work. You scared? Terrified, she admitted, but in a good way. The same way I was terrified riding after you. Then we'll be terrified together. He kissed her forehead. Mrs. Harrington. Say it again. Mrs. Harrington. He smiled against her skin. My wife, God, I love saying that. I love hearing it. She turned in his arms to face him. Colt Harrington, you're stuck with me now, for better or worse, richer or poorer, in sickness and health. Until death do us part, he finished, which better be about 60 years from now because I'm not done with you yet. 60 years minimum, she agreed. I plan to be a very annoying old woman. I'm counting on it. They lay together in the darkness, making plans and promises, building their future one whispered word at a time. Outside, Fort Benton settled into sleep. Beyond the walls, the Montana Territory stretched vast and wild and full of possibility. Somewhere out there was their land, their home, their life waiting to be built. But tonight, wrapped in each other's arms, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The next morning, Eliza woke as Mrs. Colt Harrington for the first time. Sunlight streamed through the small window of their quarters, and her husband, was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with those winter-gray eyes. Good morning, wife, he said, and his voice was rough with wonder, like he still couldn't quite believe it was real. Good morning, husband. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the scratch of his beard, the warmth of his skin. How long have you been awake? Hour or so, couldn't sleep, kept thinking I'd wake up and you'd be gone. This whole thing would be a dream. I'm real. This is real. She laced her fingers through his. You're stuck with me, Ranger. Best fate I could imagine. They had 3 more days at Fort Benton before Colt's next assignment, tracking down a gang of cattle rustlers operating near the Canadian border. 3 days to be newlyweds before reality intruded. They spent those days learning each other. Eliza discovered that Colt sang off key when he thought no one was listening, that he had a scar on his ribs from a bullet he'd taken 5 years ago, that he liked his coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. Colt learned that Eliza talked in her sleep, that she had a stubborn streak a mile wide, that she could make him laugh with just a look. On their last morning together, Eliza helped him pack his saddlebags. Her hands shook as she rolled his spare shirt, tucked in ammunition, checked his medical supplies. "It's only 6 weeks," Colt said gently, pulling her into his arms. "I'll be back before you know it." 6 weeks of you chasing criminals while I sit here worrying." She pressed her face against his chest. "I hate this already." "I know, but it's the last time, Eliza. After this assignment and 1 more, my commission's done. Then I'm yours completely. No more riding off, no more dangerous work." "Promise?" "Promise." He tilted her face up. 2 months, and then we start our life together. Our ranch, our future. Just hold on a little longer." She wanted to beg him not to go, wanted to make him quit right now, wanted to keep him safe at Fort Benton forever. But she'd known what she was marrying, a man who honored his commitments, who finished what he started. "Be careful," she whispered instead. "Please be careful." "Always am." But he held her tighter. "I love you, Eliza Harrington." "I love you too. Come back to me." Wild horses couldn't keep me away. She watched him ride out with a detail of 3 other rangers, watched until they disappeared over the northern hills. Then she went back to their quarters and let herself cry. Brief, hot tears of fear and frustration. When they were done, she wiped her eyes and made a decision. She wouldn't sit idle for 6 weeks. She'd use the time. Colonel Harrison had mentioned the land office in Fort Benton, how settlers could file preliminary claims before making the journey to their homesteads. Eliza spent the next morning there, poring over survey maps with the land agent. "You're looking at Judith Basin?" the agent asked, spreading a large map across his desk. "That's rough country, ma'am. Beautiful, but rough." "My husband, he's a territorial ranger. He knows the area. Says there's good land near Arrow Creek with water rights." The agent traced the creek with his finger. "He's not wrong. This section here, 160 acres, it's unclaimed. Good grazing, timber for building, creek runs year-round." He looked at her seriously. "But ma'am, it's isolated. No neighbors for 20 miles, no town nearby. Are you sure?" Eliza thought about Helena, about the store and the safe, suffocating life she'd left behind. "I'm sure." She filed preliminary papers on the land, paying $50 from their reward money. The agent stamped the documents and handed her a copy. "You've got 6 months to establish residence and start improvements. After that, if you meet the requirements, the land's yours." He smiled. "Good luck, Mrs. Harrington. You're going to need it." Next, she visited the fort's sutler and priced supplies. Lumber, nails, tools, seed, livestock. She made lists, calculated costs, planned. The Hendersons were staying at Fort Benton through winter, and Mrs. Henderson helped her navigate the practicalities. "You'll need a good stove," Henderson advised. "Winter up there gets brutal, and plenty of preserving jars. Growing season's short, you'll need to put up everything you can." "How do you know so much about homesteading?"
This story was posted on
My
the channel
parents settled
west
in
of the
Nebraska
trail.
territory back
Please
in
do not
52.
repost it in
I
any
was 12.
form.
Watched them build a life from nothing. Henderson squeezed her hand. "It's hard work, dear, but it's honest work. You and that ranger of yours, you'll make it work." The weeks crawled by. Eliza kept busy, working in the fort's hospital to earn extra money, helping Mrs. Henderson teach the fort children reading, planning every detail of the ranch. But at night, lying alone in their bed, she ached for Colt, worried about him, prayed for his safety. Finally, after 43 days that felt like 43 years, he rode back through the fort gates. Eliza was helping in the hospital when someone shouted, "Rangers coming in!" She dropped the bandages she was rolling and ran, not caring who saw, not caring about dignity or propriety. Colt was dismounting when she reached him, and he turned just in time to catch her as she launched herself into his arms. He spun her around, laughing, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You're back," she gasped. "You're really back." "Told you I would be." He set her down and kissed her thoroughly, right there in the middle of the parade ground. Did you miss me? Every single day, every single hour. She touched his face, his chest, his arms, needing to confirm he was solid and whole. Are you hurt? Did something happen? I'm fine. We got the rustlers, recovered most of the cattle. Clean operation. But he looked exhausted, thinner than when he'd left. What about you? What have you been doing? Come see. She dragged him to their quarters and spread the land documents across their small table. His eyes widened as he took it in. The filed claim, the survey maps, the supply lists, the careful budget she'd drawn up. Eliza, you did all this? I wasn't going to just sit idle for 6 weeks. This is our land now, Colt. Well, preliminary. We have 6 months to establish residence, but it's ours. She pointed to the map. 160 acres along Arrow Creek, exactly where you wanted. Good grazing, timber, water. He stared at the papers like they were treasure maps, his throat working with emotion. You claimed our land. Our land, she confirmed. Our future. Now, we just have to build it. Colt pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. What did I do to deserve you? You walked into my store during a rainstorm. Everything else just followed. He had 2 weeks at Fort Benton before his final assignment, escorting a payroll wagon to Fort Shaw. 2 weeks that they spent in blissful reunion, making love and making plans in equal measure. After Fort Shaw, I'll resign my commission officially, Colt said one night, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Then we head straight to the land. It'll be late September, just enough time to get a cabin up before winter. Can we build a cabin that fast? If we work hard and get lucky with weather, it'll be rough at first, just basic shelter. But come spring, we can add on, make it into a real home. I don't need a palace, Colt. I just need you and 4 walls and a roof. You'll get all 3. I promise. The Fort Shaw assignment went smoothly, and when Colt returned 17 days later, he was carrying official papers from the Territorial Ranger headquarters. His commission was complete. He was free. They left Fort Benton on October the 1st, 1873, with a loaded wagon, 2 horses, 1 milk cow, and everything they owned in the world. Colonel Harrison and the Hendersons saw them off. You take care of each other, Harrison said, shaking Colt's hand. And if you need anything at all, you send word. We will, sir. Thank you for everything. Mrs. Henderson hugged Eliza fiercely. You're a brave woman. Remember that when winter gets hard, you survived a war party. You can survive anything. The journey to their land took 4 days. They followed Arrow Creek into the heart of Judith Basin, and with every mile, Eliza felt her excitement grow. This was it. This was their future. When they finally reached their 160 acres, she understood why Colt had chosen this spot. The land rolled gently, covered in golden grass that rippled like ocean waves. Arrow Creek cut through the southern edge, clear and cold, lined with cottonwoods already turning gold with autumn. Mountains rose in the distance, the Little Belts to the south, the Snowies to the east, purple and eternal. What do you think? Colt asked, anxious despite himself. It's perfect. Eliza turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. Absolutely perfect. They chose a site for the cabin, a slight rise near the creek with good drainage and a view that went on forever. That afternoon, Colt started cutting timber while Eliza set up their tent and began organizing supplies. The work was brutal. They woke before dawn and worked until they couldn't see, racing against the approaching winter. Colt felled trees and trimmed logs while Eliza dragged branches, dug the foundation, mixed mud chinking. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Her back ached constantly. But every day, the cabin walls rose higher. Sometimes Colt would stop mid-swing and just stare at her, this woman who'd been a shopkeeper 6 months ago and was now building a home with her bare hands. What? She'd ask, wiping sweat from her face. Just loving you, he'd say simply. 3 weeks later, they had 4 walls, a roof, a door, and 2 window openings. It was rough, gaps in the chinking that would need filling, a dirt floor that needed planking, a stone fireplace that Colt was still building. But it was shelter. It was home. Their first night in the cabin, they lay on their bedroll in front of the half-finished fireplace, exhausted but triumphant. We did it, Eliza said, staring at the ceiling beams Colt had notched with his own hands. We actually built a house. We did. He pulled her closer. Told you we could do it. What happens now? Now we survive winter. Come spring, we buy cattle, plant crops, keep building. Slowly, year by year, we turn this into a real ranch. How long until it's profitable? 3 years, maybe 5, if we're unlucky. It'll be tight, Eliza. Really tight. There'll be times we go without things we need. I don't care about things. She kissed him softly. I care about this. Us. The life we're building. Even if that life is hard. Especially if it's hard. Easy lives make boring stories, she grinned, and I plan to have a hell of a story to tell our grandchildren someday. Winter hit hard in mid-November. Snow fell for 3 days straight, covering their little cabin in white silence. They spent long evenings by the fireplace, Colt carving furniture while Eliza sewed curtains from spare canvas, both of them talking about the future. I want to raise horses, Colt said one night. Good stock, the kind rangers and cavalry need. I know horses, know what makes them worth buying. And I want chickens, Eliza added, and a vegetable garden big enough to feed us and sell surplus. Maybe get a few hogs. Ambitious. You married an ambitious woman. Don't I know it? He pulled her into his lap. You charging into that war party, that's when I knew for certain. Knew what? That you'd survive anything life threw at you, that we'd survive anything as long as we had each other. Christmas found them snowed in but happy. Colt had carved Eliza a wooden box for her sewing supplies. She'd made him a new shirt from fabric she'd bought at Fort Benton. They roasted the last of their salted pork and pretended it was a feast. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Harrington, Colt said, raising his tin cup of whiskey. Merry Christmas, Mr. Harrington. She clinked her cup against his. To our first Christmas in our home. First of many. First of many, she agreed. Winter finally broke in late March, and they emerged from their cabin like bears from hibernation. The land had survived, the cabin had held, and they still had enough supplies to make it to spring. Time to start building our future for real, Colt said, surveying their property with satisfaction. They used the last of their money to buy 3 pregnant heifers from a rancher near Fort Benton. Colt built a corral while Eliza started her garden, turning over the hard earth with a spade, planting seeds Henderson had given her. By May, the heifers had calved, and suddenly they had a herd of 6. It wasn't much, but it was a start. By next year, we'll have 12, Colt calculated. Year after that, maybe 25. Grow it slow and steady. That summer, they worked from dawn to dusk. Colt broke horses for neighboring ranchers, earning cash money. Eliza's garden produced more than expected, and she sold vegetables at Fort Benton. They ate venison Colt hunted and fish he caught in Arrow Creek. It wasn't easy, wasn't comfortable, but it was theirs. One evening in August, sitting on the porch Colt had just finished building, Eliza realized she was happy. Deeply, completely happy in a way she'd never been in Helena. What are you smiling about? Colt asked, settling beside her. This. Us. Everything. She leaned against him. A year ago, I was standing in a store dreaming about adventures I'd never have. Now look at me. Now look at you, he agreed. Building a ranch, surviving winter, making a life from nothing. Your father would be so proud. He is proud.
This story was posted on the
She
channel
squeezed
West
Colt's
of
hand.
Betrayal.
Thank you
Please
for
do not
showing me I could
repost
do
it
this.
in any form.
You showed yourself. I just didn't get in the way. Fall came again, and with it, their first real profit. They'd sold beef cattle, broken horses, and Eliza's surplus vegetables. After paying debts and buying supplies, they had $73 left, a fortune to them. We can buy more heifers, Colt suggested, or lumber to expand the cabin. Or we could save it for emergencies, Eliza said practically. We made it through one winter. Let's make sure we can handle another. When did you become so wise? When I married a cowboy who taught me the value of hard work. Their second winter was easier than the first. They had more food stored, better preparation, and the confidence that came from surviving once. By spring of 1875, their herd had grown to 18 head, and Colt's horse-breaking business was bringing in steady income. We're going to make it, Eliza said one morning, watching their cattle graze. We're actually going to make it, Never doubted it for a second, Colt lied, and she laughed because they'd both doubted it plenty. That June, they got word that Governor Benjamin Potts was touring the territory, visiting remote settlements to assess development. He'd be stopping at Fort Benton, and Colonel Harrison sent word that he wanted Colt and Eliza to attend. "Why would the governor want to see us?" Eliza asked, reading the letter. "Probably about the Ghost Hawk incident. Harrison mentioned we'd been recommended for formal recognition." Colt didn't sound excited. "Politics. I hate politics." "Well, we're going anyway. When's the last time we left the ranch?" "That's because we have a ranch to run. And it'll still be here when we get back. Come on, Cowboy. Let's get cleaned up and go be famous." They arrived at Fort Benton to find it decorated for the governor's visit. Bunting hung from buildings, soldiers stood in crisp formation, and what seemed like half the territory had shown up for the occasion. Colonel Harrison greeted them warmly. "Harrington, Mrs. Harrington, good to see you both. How's ranch life treating you?" "Keeping us busy, sir," Colt said. "We're making progress." "I'll say. I heard you sold beef cattle to the fort last month. Good stock, too." Harrison lowered his voice. "Governor Potts wants to meet you both personally. He's heard the story about the wagon train, about you two standing off Ghost Hawk's war party. He's calling you heroes." Eliza shifted uncomfortably. "Colonel, we just did what anyone would do." "Anyone didn't do it. You did. Now come on, Governor's about to give his speech." Governor Potts was a stocky man with a commanding presence and a politician's smile. He gave a rousing speech about Montana's future, about brave settlers building civilization in the wilderness, about the courage that defined the American frontier. Then he called Colt and Eliza forward. "I want to recognize two citizens who exemplify everything great about Montana Territory," Potts announced. In October of 1873, former Territorial Ranger Colt Harrington and his wife Eliza faced down Ghost Hawk's war party to protect a wagon train of innocent settlers. Outnumbered 60-2, they stood their ground until cavalry arrived. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Eliza felt her face heat. "But that's not the most remarkable part of their story," the governor continued, clearly relishing the drama. "The most remarkable part is that Mrs. Harrington rode into that war party alone, rode straight at armed warriors to save the man she loved. They say she fired her last bullet standing back-to-back with her husband, ready to die together rather than surrender." The crowd erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "That's the Montana spirit!" Others took up the cry. Governor Potts waited for quiet, then smiled. "Today, I'm pleased to present both Mr. and Mrs. Harrington with the Territorial Medal of Valor. You represent the best of us, courage, sacrifice, and love that conquers fear." He pinned medals to their chests while people cheered. Colt looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Eliza just held his hand and smiled, thinking how strange it was that the scariest moment of her life had become this celebrated story. After the ceremony, people swarmed them. Everyone wanted to shake their hands, hear the story firsthand, ask about their ranch. An elderly woman grabbed Eliza's arm and said earnestly, "You're an inspiration, dear. Shows women can be just as brave as men." A young boy asked Colt, "How many warriors did you kill?" "That's not the point, son," Colt said firmly. "The point is, we protected people who needed protecting, that's all." Finally, they managed to escape to a quiet corner of the fort where they could breathe. "That was horrible, Colt muttered, tugging at his collar. "All those people, all that attention." "You hate it," Eliza observed, amused. "Don't you?" "A little, but also—" She looked at the medal pinned to her dress. Papa would have loved it. He would have been so proud, telling everyone about his brave daughter. Colt's expression softened. "He would have been. He was already proud of you before any of this happened." "I know, but still. It's nice to think his daughter became someone worth celebrating." They stayed one night at Fort Benton, had dinner with Colonel Harrison and the governor, and endured more stories about their courage. The next morning, they loaded their wagon and headed home. "Think they'll forget about us eventually?" Colt asked as they rolled through the Judith Basin grasslands. "Probably not. We're going to be the couple who fought Ghost Hawk for the rest of our lives." "Great," he said sarcastically, but he was smiling. "Could be worse." "How?" We could be the couple who died that day instead of the couple who lived. I'll take being famous over being dead any day. Fair point. They arrived back at the ranch to find everything as they'd left it, cattle grazing peacefully, chickens pecking in the yard, their little cabin standing solid against the Montana sky. Eliza felt tension she didn't know she'd been carrying drain away. Home, she said simply. Home, Colt agreed. That night they sat on their porch watching the sun set over the Little Belt Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The air smelled like grass and distance. Somewhere, a coyote called, lonely and wild. You know what the best part of today was? Colt asked. What? When the governor was telling our story, making it sound like some grand adventure, all I could think was, he's got it wrong. Wrong how? He made it sound like the adventure was the fight, the danger, the dramatic moment. Colt turned to face her. But that wasn't the adventure, Eliza. That was just the beginning. The real adventure has been this, building our ranch, surviving winters, making a life together. This quiet, ordinary, extraordinary life we're living right now. That's the adventure worth telling about. Eliza's throat tightened with emotion. You're getting poetic in your old age, Cowboy. Must be the influence of my wife. He pulled her close. She taught me that adventure isn't always about danger and excitement. Sometimes it's about choosing love, about being brave enough to reach for happiness, about building something that lasts. Is that what we're doing? Building something that lasts? Yeah. He kissed her temple. I think we are. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged, thousands of them, so many more than Eliza had ever seen in Helena. The Montana sky stretched vast and infinite above them. Colt? Remember that first night in my store? When you came back with the willow bark tea? Of course. You said if you came back, you'd want things you had no business wanting. She smiled against his shoulder. What were those things? This, he said immediately. You, this ranch, this life. A home instead of just places I slept. Someone to build dreams with instead of just surviving day to day. His arms tightened around her. I wanted all of it, but I didn't think I deserved it. Didn't think a broken-down ranger had any right to dream that big. And now? Now I know I didn't deserve you. Still don't, probably. But you chose me anyway, and that makes me the luckiest man in Montana. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. The governor called us heroes today, but Eliza, you're the only hero in this story. You're the one who had the courage to choose something different, to reach for what you wanted even though it scared you. You saved me long before that war party. You saved me the night you stitched my arm and looked at me like I was something more than just another drifter. I looked at you like you were everything, Eliza corrected, because you were. From that very first moment, you were everything. They kissed under the Montana stars, two people who'd found each other in a rainstorm and built a life from nothing. Two people who'd faced death together and chosen to live together. Two people whose love story would be told around campfires and dinner tables for generations. But that night, sitting on their porch with the ranch they'd built spreading around them, they weren't thinking about their legend. They were thinking about tomorrow, about the fence that needed mending, the garden that needed weeding, the life that needed living. You want to know something? Eliza asked. What's that? When I was a girl dreaming of the ocean, of adventure and distant shores, I was dreaming of the wrong thing. I thought adventure meant
This
going
story was
somewhere else,
posted on the
being
channel
someone
west
else.
of
But
Betrayal.
the greatest adventure
Please
of my
do not
life was
repost
standing
it
still.
in any form.
It was choosing you. It was building this. She gestured at their ranch, their home. It was learning that brave isn't always about charging into battle. Sometimes brave is just choosing to love someone completely, knowing it might break your heart. Did I break your heart? No. She kissed him softly. You made it whole. Colt stood and pulled her to her feet. Come on, Mrs. Harrington, let's go to bed. Why, Mr. Harrington, are you propositioning your wife? Every single day for the rest of our lives, if you'll let me. I'll let you, she said, laughing. I'll definitely let you. They walked into their cabin, not much to look at from the outside, but filled with everything that mattered. The bed Colt had built with his own hands, the curtains Eliza had sewn, the fireplace where they'd sat through 2 winters planning their future, the life they'd created together from scratch. Later, lying in Colt's arms, listening to his heartbeat slow into sleep, Eliza thought about the scared girl who'd stood in a store in Helena waiting for her life to begin. About the cowboy who'd walked through her door during a rainstorm and changed everything. People would tell their story wrong, she realized. They'd focus on the dramatic parts, the war party, the battle, the narrow escape. They'd make it sound like one grand adventure that ended with happily ever after. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was that the adventure never ended. Every day was another choice to be brave, another choice to love, another choice to keep building, keep trying, keep reaching for something more. The truth was that she'd called him her cowboy before she even knew his name, and somehow, impossibly, she'd been right. He was hers. He'd always been hers, from that first moment their eyes met across a lamplit store. And she was his. Forever. The Montana wind whispered through the walls of their cabin, carrying the scent of sage and distance and home. Outside, their cattle rested, their horses dozed, their land stretched away in every direction, 160 acres of hard-won future. And inside, wrapped in her husband's arms, Eliza Warren Harrington, shopkeeper, warrior, rancher, legend, finally, perfectly, completely understood what Papa had meant when he told her to be brave. Being brave wasn't charging into battle. It was choosing love over fear. It was building a life instead of just surviving one. It was waking up every morning and deciding that today, again, you'd reach for happiness instead of settling for safety. She'd been brave. They'd both been brave. And they'd won. Not because they'd survived a war party or earned medals or became famous. They'd won because they'd chosen each other. Because they'd built a home together. Because even now, 2 years after that rainstorm in Helena, Eliza still looked at her husband and felt her heart skip, still saw her cowboy, her love, her adventure. And she always would. That was the real story. That was the legend worth telling. Not how they survived death, but how they chose life. Together. Always together. Under the vast Montana sky where anything was possible and love conquered everything, Eliza closed her eyes and smiled. She was home. She was happy. She was exactly where she belonged. And that, she thought, as sleep claimed her, was the greatest adventure of all.